Welcome. Call to order the Village Council of Pinehurst meeting for April 22nd, 2025. Thank you for joining us here, and those of you who might be watching remotely. We'll begin as we usually do. We'll have an invocation, and it's going to be brought to us by Mike Apke of the village staff. So appreciate that, Mike. Amen. Okay. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. All righty, let's go on as we usually do with reports. We'll begin with the report from the village manager, Doug Willardson. Doug?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Saturday is our Military Child Appreciation Day. So on April 25th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Cannon Park, we'll be doing a celebration. We'll have a free cookout, kid-friendly activities, and entertainment. Even though we call it the Military Child Appreciation or Celebration, it is open to everyone, so everyone's welcome to come and join in the festivities. It is an event co-sponsored by the Kiwanis Club of the Sandhills with us.
What's the time for that again?
11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then Shop Small this spring is going to be May 5th through the 10th. So that's a program where we encourage people to shop in our local shops downtown, and if you do that, you can bring a receipt to the Welcome Center and be entered into a drawing for some of the baskets that we have that we raffle off at the end of the week. And then last of all, on Saturday, May 9th, is Live After 5 with Gary Lauder and Smokin' Hot at the Arboretum.
Okay, thank you. I have a few items to report on. First of all, last week I joined some of the residents of Pinehurst number 6 on a litter sweep along 15501 north there. And it was good to see some people up at early in the morning. And today I had the opportunity to join Mike and some of the village staff and members of the beautification committee in a litter sweep around the village, basically, Highway Beulah Hill Road and Ritter Road and all those. And so hopefully they look a little cleaner for everybody. Last week, myself and my dog participated in the Linden Lodge Dog Dash that went all through the village. There were quite a few people with dogs there. So it was good to see the enthusiasm for such a worthwhile charity like Linden Lodge. I had the opportunity to meet earlier this week with Mayor Gaddy of Taylortown, our neighbor. We're just trying to establish a dialogue and all there. And I know him through some other gatherings we have. And they're obviously moving ahead on some changes in their community. And we agreed to stay in touch and work together where we can. And lastly, I went to the Pinehurst Resort on Monday, I believe, and there was a ceremony there where the person who won the U.S. Open last year, Brian DeChambeau, came back for a photo session of where he made that famous shot out of the bunker on the 18th hole onto the green and won the U.S. Open. And by chance, they had a few plaques, identical replicas of the plaque that is in the ground there now. And he signed one for me. So this, as long as it's appropriate, it's for the village to display wherever you all staff thinks it is worthwhile. He must have signed about 100 of these, mostly for young kids and then for me. So, I really think it belongs here in Village Hall rather than with me. So I'll turn it over to the village clerk, and you all can figure out where it's best.
We could keep it in my office just to make sure it's safe. You know.
So anyway, that's all I have to report, and turn it over now to Dr. Morgan.
A few things, thank you. First of all, on 10 May, we have the Miss Senior America North Carolina pageant going on in Sand Hills Community College. So if you have a desire to attend that, they'll be going on. Tomorrow, in the evening, there will be a CPRC, the Central Pines Regional Council meeting. And that I'll be attending that virtually, but they'll be discussing their budget for the year. And that organization does disperse a fair amount of monies in through the central portion of North Carolina. And last thing on there is if folks are going to celebrate Cinco de Mayo, just remember that's coming up soon here, the 5th of May, and that's actually a celebration of the Mexican soldiers defeating the French forces in the Battle of Puebla, which is close to Mexico City. So it's a big deal in the Latin community, specifically Mexico, but also throughout Latin America. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us of that. I appreciate that. Mr. Taylor.
Had one experience on a personal note that I just thought I would share. I was out working in the yard, I don't know, 10 days or so ago in the afternoon, and came upon a raccoon huddled up against our house, not looking particularly healthy. And I had always thought that when you saw a raccoon out in the day, it probably meant that it was rabid. I'm told that that is not 100% accurate, but is often accurate. So I called the Pinehurst Police Department, who informed me that they actually don't deal with that. So for anyone listening to this, it's actually Moore County, the sheriff's office, who will send an animal control officer. And they did send one out. I kept an eye on it while I waited. They were very responsive. I don't think it took more than 10 minutes to get there. And unfortunately, I thought they might throw a net over it or something like that. The officer said, no, we dispatch these. And the only reason I mention this is he said this is the 4th one that he has done in and around the not just the village of Pinehurst, but in this general area in the last couple of weeks. So I just make people aware of the possibility that there's a bit of an outbreak for that. Only other thing I would comment on, a week ago yesterday, I was at the Moore County Board of Commissioners work session. They were they were looking at a number of things, as we often do in our work sessions. They also had one of our state congressional representatives there talking about some of the legislation that either is enforced or is being considered, such as what used to be called Senate Bill 382. It's now actually a statute. And the possibility for repealing those provisions of us that had to do or that would impact zoning. This is of significant consequence to a couple of communities in Moore County who have recently made some changes to zoning, and conceivably down the road could be of concern for us. So it was interesting to hear the dialogue. It is most relevant for them because they're in the process of updating their land use plan, and they really don't know what they can or should be able to do at the moment until they know whether this actually is going to be repealed or not. So it's interesting to listen to what was going on there. That's it for me.
Thanks for sharing that. Councilwoman Ficklin.
Thank you. Last Thursday, I attended the quasi-judicial workshop, which was presented by the UNC School of Government, well attended by Pinehurst, because it was here in Village Hall, and we had representatives from both planning and zoning as well as HPC boards. There were other representatives from municipalities close by. In addition to that, yesterday we had a NAC meeting. Dana presented the 2026 budget. It was very well received. the participants were, the representatives were very complimentary of her work, and also thanked the staff and the council for their continued efforts to keep our tax rate the lowest, the municipal of the lowest tax rates. A couple of reminders of upcoming events. This is the last call for the plant sale, Pinehurst Garden Club plant sale, this Sunday, 9 to 3, Greenhaven Plant Farm in Carthage. On Tuesday, May 6th, the Village Heritage Foundation is sponsoring a garden party from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Timmel Pavilion, and tickets are available through Ticket Me Sandhills. Couple events at the Outpost I wanted to mention. One was on Easter Sunday. If you were wondering where the Easter Bunny was, she was at the Outpost. She made an appearance to an event to celebrate Beatrix Potter, given by the Given Tufts Foundation. Also at the Outpost on Tuesday, April 30th at 9 a.m., the Given Tufts Foundation will be hosting a ribbon cutting that will hoist the American flag onto the original flagpole, which hasn't been done in a decade. To celebrate the foundation's takeover of the Outpost building on April 30th of 2015. And they, at that time, moved the Given bookstore and the roast office to the former post office. So as most of you probably already know, Kara Mathis manages the Outpost. What you may not know is that Kara represented Pinehurst as Mrs. Moore County in the Mrs. North Carolina pageant on April 15th in Lincolnton, North Carolina. Her platform is Finding Common Ground, Bridging the Political Divide. So congratulations to Kara. And that's it for me.
Thank you for that update and news. Didn't know all those things were happening. Mr. Farrell.
Congratulations, Kara. Yeah, I will second the comment that Dana did a fabulous job presenting a complex subject, which is our budget document to the members of the Neighborhood Advisory Commission, and she made it very understandable. So it was an excellent job, and I think they again commented that we do have the lowest tax rate of any municipality, including Moore County, within Moore County. So it's kudos to the staff for doing that. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee met last week, and we reviewed some projects that are going on, but more importantly, I think there was a discussion about funding grants, and there's a number around, but they're difficult to find sometimes, and the timing is always critical. So the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee is going to work to find grants that may be useful to help with our intermodal or multimodal project status, and I think that's an indication of how aggressive, and not aggressive necessarily, but how active the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee is going to be in the future. I'm very encouraged by that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I've got one other thing I
Oh,
forgot to
go right
mention. And because we've got a little bit of a span here before our next meeting. Mother's Day, coming up on 11 May. And so reminder to get your flowers early, but the other reminder here for the announcement is that it is one of the heaviest visited days for Pinehurst. So be aware of that, and we'll probably see a lot of traffic coming through here.
Okay. Thank you. Good announcement. All righty, we will go on to item 4, which is the consent agenda. The items that we're about to consider are routine or have been discussed at length in previous meetings and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion will be held unless requested by a member of the village council. And so we'll be approving the April 8th regular meeting minutes, the April 8th work session minutes, and the budget amendments report. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve all of the items listed and considered routine on the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We've approved item 4. We will now go, that's the end of consent agenda. We will now go to a proclamation regarding, 2025 National Police Week and Peace Officers Memorial Day Proclamation. Let me get to this. I'll read this proclamation. We, of course, are very proud of our police department, and so it's a pleasure to participate in this national effort. That whereas in 1962, the United States Congress and the President of the United States designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, in the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the Police Department of the Village of Pinehurst, North Carolina, play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of Pinehurst, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, hazards, responsibilities, and sacrifices of their police department, and whereas members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the police department of the Village of Pinehurst unceasingly provide a vital public service, now, therefore, I, Patrick Pizzella, Mayor of the Village of Pinehurst, call upon all our citizens and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 11th through May 17th as Police Week in the Village of Pinehurst, and with appropriate ceremonies and observances in which all of our citizens may join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in so doing have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all our citizens. Further, I call upon all citizens of the Village of Pinehurst to observe May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community, or have become disabled in the performance of duty, and let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes. Therefore, I set my hand and cause to be affixed to this official seal of the Village of Pinehurst on this day, the 22nd of April. Thank you to our police force. Congratulations. Any comments? I think we're unanimous in agreement on this proclamation. Okay. All righty. Now, our next item is just as, I'm going to step down here and read this. This is a resolution honoring Mr. Edward Balkovic, who has been on the Neighborhood Advisory Council committee for many years, and is also well known to attend breakfasts at the Village Cafe. So, Ed, come on up, Ed.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Come on right here, and I'll read this. Get comfortable.
Oh, boy.
All right. Here it is, suitable to be framed. Well, it is framed. It's suitable to hang. Okay. A resolution honoring the service of Mr. Edward Balkovic. Whereas Ed has been a dedicated and invaluable member of the Village of Pinehurst community, and whereas Ed has generously volunteered his time and expertise to serve on the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and whereas Ed served with distinction as the Pinehurst Trace Area Representative from July 2018 to March 2025, and whereas Ed's dedication to enhancing the quality of life for residents in the Pinehurst Trace area and the Village of Pinehurst community as a whole is demonstrated by his service on the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and whereas Ed was instrumental in the 2023 reorganization of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, which helped to solidify the role of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee representatives as liaisons between the individual neighborhoods of the Village of Pinehurst and the Village Council and leadership. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Pinehurst, North Carolina, in a regular meeting assembled this 22nd day of April as follows. The Village Council hereby expresses, on behalf of the citizens of the Village of Pinehurst, its sincere gratitude and appreciation to Mr. Edward Balkovic for his exemplary service and dedication to the community, and that a copy of this resolution will be spread upon the permanent minutes of the Village of Pinehurst, and a copy duly executed by the mayor be presented to Ed as a token of our esteem. Ed, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, Ed doesn't want to say anything. For once. This is a historical moment. Okay.
While the mayor comes back up to the podium, I will actually say a few words about Ed. He is the model NAC member, so he is helpful in sharing information with his community and also providing information back to village management so we can know how to better help his neighborhood and all the neighborhoods in the community. And we also have a lot of fun joking about life in Massachusetts, where we were both formerly lived. So, Ed, you were one of my favorites, and I'm going to miss you, so thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it. All right, let us move on to.
So we should probably make it official and actually.
Oh, okay. I will entertain a motion if someone would like to make one.
I move to approve Resolution 2513, honoring Mr. Edward Balkovic for his service as the Neighborhood Advisory Committee representative for the Pinehurst Trace area.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Congratulations, Ed.
I can keep this now then.
Yes, get home. All right, we are now about to enter the public comments period, and some people may have signed up. No, some people didn't sign up. If they haven't, but they'd like to come forward, please do. And comment on what you'd like, but you should feel free to comment on anything you see coming up on the agenda also later in the event.
Thank you very much. Daniel May, I spoke last meeting, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak
Daniel,
again.
tell me again, where do you reside?
Village Acres, sir.
You live in Village Acres. Thank you.
Yep. And so I actually want to address the audience, if I may. So I've spoke last time about short-term rentals, and I know short-term rentals has been a controversial topic from various people's perspective. It's something that I'm passionate about. It's something that, can you hear me? Oh, okay. It's something that I find to be important, and please intervene if I go over in any way. But when I left the military, it allowed me to stay in the community as well as pay for my mortgage. And I know there's a lot of other people who may struggle to pay for their mortgage. They may be single mothers. They may be paying for medical bills. They may be active duty, having deployments and wanting to sublet their house. And I've stayed in these short-term rentals, and so I know these people. I'm very concerned that the approach in managing the short-term rentals has not been a personal approach. It has not been hospitable, in my opinion, which is something that I've taken away from my time as a short-term rental host. And so I do have concerns just about Granicus. I don't think that they're a Pinehurst first company. I don't know if there's any representatives from Granicus in the audience. But for $40,000, that's a small business association loan. We could have started a business within Pinehurst to address this problem. This could be an opportunity to unite people, and I'm afraid that it just has not been a uniting opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other resident of Pinehurst who would like to speak? Yes, please come forward.
My name is Belinda Brown.
Speak to the mic, please.
Belinda.
Thank you, Belinda.
Belinda Brown. We are ETJ-R5, and this is my nephew. I have lived at ETJ-5 for 65 years. I have gone through a number of changes with this board. Now we are facing with the Senate Bill 314, and it was just strange that today in the pilot, they actually went over some of the issues with the Senate Bill 314. Excuse me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. And I have to agree with them. We have, I understand that you're the mayor. This is the first time I've seen you. None of us know, being in ETJ, who this panel is. We have got nothing from Pinehurst, absolutely nothing. It's a family-based community. It's about 75 to 100 residents out there. We have it. What brings me here today is they have like a car installation in which they have done in the yard for forever. Inspector Fowler was the one that came out and told us that we did not have to have a business because we were doing it in our yard. There were no discussion of noise pollution or ordinance or anything of the sort. Within the last 2 to 3 years, the Moore County Sheriff's Department has come out and told us that there is a person on the Southern Pines side that calls them and tells them that we are disturbing the peace. When we asked the Moore County Sheriff's Department what did we need to do, because we have an EIN, we are a business, we have a car audio, his is a car audio, and we have one that actually paints and buffs out cars and things of that nature. Moore County Sheriff's Department said that we needed to come to Pinehurst, get something in writing or get a permit since we were ETJ Pinehurst. I put in the application, paid my $50, got denied for that because they said that the noise from the auto would be destructive to my community. No one in my community has raised a concern about the noise. It is Southern Pines. Southern Pines doesn't have anything to do with Pinehurst, so they call Moore County. We are, as described in this Senate Bill 314, caught in the middle. It's either we're Pinehurst or either we're the county. I'm out of $50 because in your own bylaws or your own rules said that because it wasn't a full-time job that I didn't have to do a homeowner's conditional permit. It just has to be something to display to the Sheriff's Department that you are aware that we have a small business that is not 7 days a week, 24/7. So now I'm out of $50, and to appeal that is $1,000. We're getting nothing but grief. And I would like to know what do we have to do to get a small business, how we would like to earn a decent living without having the runaround from Pinehurst zoning and the Moore County Sheriff's Department and this man in Southern Pines. And for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to call him Mr. CNN. Mr. CNN is the only person in the last 4 years, and this was verified through the Moore County Sheriff's Department, that has called a complaint about the noise. And we've been doing this for the last 20, 25 years, trying to earn a living to pay $50 for a permit that was not needed, that was told to me to do the permit by one of the Pinehurst zoning and compliance people. I have called Tom Tillis today in regards to this Senate Bill 13, this whole community and everyone else that we can get to rally up, for all these ETJ communities to rally up and vote of this Senate Bill 13 because of the mistreatment, and I will say that word, the mistreatment of what we're getting out there. Spectrum doesn't come out there because they said, well, y'all are not Pinehurst, you're ETJ. We don't have city water. We don't have city pickup. We have nothing, but if we want to put in a house, we have to come up and get a permit. We might see them come out and inspect the building for a permit. If we want to add a step, we got to get a permit. We continuously pay Pinehurst and get nothing back. So could you please tell me at this point in time, what is there to do? All we're asking, and we'll sit quietly for another few years, is to have the permit to earn a decent living.
Thank you. thank you for sharing those comments, and we'll look into the matter. Let me make sure we have your name correct. Is it Melinda Brown?
Yes, and Mr. Alex knows me. He knows me very well because I'm the voice of the community. And Matthew, Tony, what's his name on that paper? Yeah, Michael Mandeville was the one that told me to put in that application that now I'm $50 less.
Okay. We'll bring it to their attention. We're familiar with them, so we'll see if we can have some follow-up on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to offer some public comments at this moment on any topic? Okay, hearing none, the public comments period is closed, and we'll now enter a public hearing. This is a major site request for Pine Wild Country Club's renovations and expansion. So, if someone would like to move.
I move to recess the regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 1.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are now into public hearing number 1. And this is to deal with the major site plan request for Pine Wild Country Club renovations and expansion. Alex and Doug, you all want to start this off?
I think we'll just turn it over to Alex.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this public hearing, as you just mentioned, is to consider a major site plan request. And this is for the expansion of the existing clubhouse, reconfiguration of existing parking, and the addition of a new fitness center and other site improvements there are 2 applicable properties, Moore County parcel ID numbers 000-25252 and 25256. The address by Moore County is 4 Glasgow Drive, and the applicant of record is Chris Card, Chief Executive Officer with IA Clubs and Resorts, and the owner is AEP Pine Wild Holdings, LLC. Doug, I may need help with advancing this. All right, so major site plans are identified as any non-residential development or multifamily development which will exceed 2 acres and land disturbing activity. Of course, that is met with this project, and the PDO does prescribe the process in which major site plans are to be reviewed, which does elevate that initial decision of a review of a general concept plan to Village Council after a public hearing is held, which we're in. Final review and approval is a responsibility of the Technical Review Committee or the TRC. Prior to the public hearings being scheduled for the Planning and Zoning Board for a recommendation to this Village Council and this public hearing, the Technical Review Committee does review a general concept plan and other required material for general compliance with adopted standard. Staff does provide a recommendation, which I will conclude my presentation with, based on that consensus from the TRC or the Technical Review Committee. So this is an administrative decision. Administrative decisions are grounded in adopted objective standards. They are typically performed by staff, but some that are of large scale, which is identified again by our local ordinance by those exceeding 2 acres and land disturbance, are elevated to other bodies and do not typically require public hearings, but here we do. With administrative reviews and decisions, if the standards are met, the approval must be granted. Any recommended revisions or changes to any request for a major site plan must be based on consistency with adopted standards. So conversely, this is not a legislative or a quasi-judicial decision. So based on those standards, again, they're grounded in objective standards in the PDO, the Pine Ridge Development Ordinance, as well as the Engineering Standards and Specifications Manual, and any other applicable state and local regulations. Appendix C of our PDO lists the information that is required for the submittal of a major site plan review to be indicated on the general concept plan and other additional material. The general concept plan, or the GCP, is merely intended to convey the project's general compliance, hence the name. It is not intended to be a fully designed or engineered plan. Such documents, additional detail, are provided during that next review phase by the Technical Review Committee. So a little image kind of outlining the process of a major site plan review. The lighter blue there is where we are with the process with the Village Council holding the public hearing. The next step would be that construction drawing review and approval by the Technical Review Committee before the work may actually commence on site. So now more into the specifics of the request. So they're looking to expand the clubhouse to 20,000, a little over 20,000 square feet from the existing 8,200. The addition of a 3,700 square foot fitness center. Additional parking, I'll speak more to parking on a later slide. And it does have road frontage on Glasgow Drive and McMichael Drive. And the area is zoned Recreation Development District where country clubs are allowed by right. So parking, currently there's 116 spaces on site, and that will be expanded to a total of 318. There will be an overflow gravel parking. The PDO does allow graded gravel parking to be used instead of paved surface. However, only 25% of provided parking can be met with graded gravel. Also, the PDO does allow for compact or alternate spaces to be provided up to 20% of the required, and they are providing that by having 107 golf cart spaces. Of course, since with this being a country club, the intent is that a lot of folks will internally be driving from the community, the residential community, to the new amenities there. I have a table breaking down the required parking based on the assemblage of uses on that site, which is 188. And again, they're providing a total of now 318. 211 of those spaces are regular, 64 of those 211 are gravel, and again, 107 spaces are reserved for golf cart spaces. So the overall increase of impervious surface coverage for this project is an increase of 1.3%. The RD district allows for up to 24%, as well as the watershed protection district, which this property is located. However, any existing development that was there prior to June of 1993 is not included in that calculation. So they're well in compliance with those two regulations. Since they will be disturbing greater than an area, 1 acre in area, there will be another level of review where the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality will need to review and issue an erosion control plan. There are 3 connections that are proposed and 1 surface entrance. A traffic memorandum was submitted. We do require that a trip generation be prepared. The memo does say conservatively that they would estimate an additional 432 daily trips. The trip generation is based on land use codes and what they believe, again, this is very conservative and don't expect that number of daily trips as the club operates as membership only. They do assume there will be a lot of internal capture. What internal capture is that the country club itself is also a destination that others would be already making within the community via their home. So there will be expected additional trips for maybe new deliveries, maybe additional staff, but not actually being the sole destination. Again, so there will be a lot of internal capture there. So the next slides are just indicating some images from the plans. This is the existing condition, so this is an aerial of the clubhouse property now. You see the clubhouse kind of situating right dead center with some site features around it. You have some tennis courts there, an existing pool, and the next slide should be maybe the demolition plan. So you can see these are the areas where they expect grading, tree removal, kind of hatched there, so you can kind of see the total area of disturbance. The next slide, I believe, is the overall site plan. So now you can start to see the new clubhouse addition. You can see the footprint for the new fitness center and the expansive addition to the parking on the site. As also required, they are to submit general elevations of the proposed structures. So here you'll see the revised clubhouse and the fitness center through the next couple slides. Okay, so the Planning and Zoning Board, they did take this matter up and hold a public hearing in their regular meeting earlier this month on April 3rd, and they did unanimously recommend approval of the major site plan request. And the staff recommendation is, since we have reviewed this as a technical review committee, and it is administrative and approval must be granted if the standards are met, we do concur that the standards have been met for a general concept plan review and recommend Village Council approve this request. So your action, after conducting the public hearing and receiving public comment on the proposal, consider the Planning and Zoning Board and the staff recommendation, and you have the ability to approve. You can approve by motion and only must do so if you find that all those standards have been met. You would have the ability to approve with conditions if you find that there is some other item that needs to be addressed related to conformance with the adopted standards. And if you believe or you find that the plan is not compliant with adopted standards, and you have the authority to reject that site plan. Just a footnote that it is known within the PDO that if Village Council were failed to act within 90 days of being placed on an agenda, then the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board is deemed approval of the general concept plan. And that will conclude my portion of the presentation, and I understand that the applicant and their design team are here. Village Council has additional questions for them that I may not be able to answer.
Okay, I'll open it up to my colleagues. Are there any particular questions that members of the council have? Dr. Morgan? None. John?
I had one, Alex. You said that the impermeable surface is going up by 1.3% to 6.3, so that implies it's 5% now. The size is more than doubling plus the addition, and it still seems to be a single story, not a two. I just found that math interesting.
And the applicant's team can speak more to that, but there are additional improvements that are taking place on site where there is, technically there will be, if you look at it from a runoff perspective too, an overall reduction in that runoff, as there are no existing facilities there on site to manage that. But understand what you mean. If you take it from, again, looking at the existing conditions based on what that overall square footage would be, it looks like that on the scope of that plan, but we're talking about impervious surfaces measured by per lot area. So the first slide kind of showed what the public hearing notification map looked like. This includes a lot of the golf course property. So if you take it on a scale of the overall property area, not just the project area.
Okay, thank you. I see what you mean. Thank you.
Councilman Ficklin, any questions? Mr. Farrell?
Yeah, I have a couple comments, questions. One is there seems to be a significant amount of impervious surface here, considering the parking lots and the construction and so forth. And the contour plan that I saw in the application package indicates there's a fair amount of slope from where the tennis courts or the pool is right now down to where the entry to the club would be. I mean, it may be somewhere in the range of 10 feet or so. So stormwater management is going to be a significant issue considering the contour and the amount of impervious surface. So I'm kind of curious as to what the stormwater plan would be. I see 3 what appears to be retention basins on site, one across the road, if you will, and the one in front of the clubhouse and the other closer to McMichael Road, I think. So I'd like to understand how the contour, the current contour can be modified and or will be modified to alleviate the significant amount of stormwater that could be moving out of this development.
Sure. So in the agenda packet and with the general concept plan, sheet C 4.0 did contain a proposed grading plan which shows how the grading will be met on site and how the contours will be the existing versus the post-development contours and the proposed utility network to handle the stormwater management. But at this point, I would like to introduce Tucker McKenzie, and he can speak a little bit more on the stormwater so I don't drown myself.
Yeah,
Please identify yourself.
Tucker McKenzie, Withers Ravenel, civil engineer. Yeah, pun intended there. So, yeah, you noted there are 3 stormwater control devices. We have done the sizing to make sure that they're adequately sized for the impervious runoff into that area to meet all of our PDO and state requirements for runoff. And we've also created our grading plan to confirm that the sizing necessary can be met. So it was, as we're adding the amount of impervious that we're adding, we understand that, it's additional runoff is a natural concern, and how do we manage that? Luckily, there's already ordinance in place to kind of regulate that and make sure that that happens appropriately. All the details of that have not been submitted to the village for approval. That'll happen during the construction drawing process. But from our perspective, we've done a lot of our diligence on to make sure that we've run the calculations and we have the construction drawings to make sure that it's both constructible and maintainable for the long term of this. And we were going from 0 stormwater control devices now to 3 control devices in the future. So again, the intent is to reduce the overall, and the requirement is to reduce the overall stormwater.
So the stormwater from the club side of the road are going to be directed towards the 2 stormwater management facilities on that site, not on the other side of the road towards the gravel parking lot. Is that correct?
That's correct. And so it'll be managed in a way such that what's called a pre and post development of runoff is consistent. So in other words, we're not moving drainage from, if it was previously draining towards that gravel parking lot, then we're going to continue that drainage pattern so that we're not disrupting the typical drainage flow, but and controlled to that method.
So we're assured that this will not be the source of water to the external parcels. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're taking additional measures just to make sure during the construction drawing phase that the downstream water is directed in a manner that's not disruptive to other parcels.
Well, I know the village will be looking at that carefully during construction drawing time,
absolutely.
right? So that is of concern. So I assume that that'll be handled appropriately. And I think it's a concern to the community and for you, obviously. So the second would be, it appears that there'll be a new parking lot in an area which is presently just wooded across the road, across the Glasgow Drive. And part of that parking lot is reasonably close to existing residences, or a residence in particular. And we have a situation where it appears that maybe at least 15 or plus spaces will be directed towards the house, and so you have the headlights shining into that property. So I'm assuming, reassure me here, that there's going to be sufficient blockage or vegetation between the parking lot and that dwelling such that it will not dramatically impact the residences in that area.
So there will be perimeter landscaping that will be required along all the new parking areas, which will consist of a mix of trees and evergreen shrubs at the rate that's prescribed in the PDO.
But not necessarily totally blockage.
Potentially.
Right. Okay. The only last comment I said, there appears to be at least a couple places where the development is going to enter other properties. For example, on the railroad side, it looks like there's I think this was noted during the planning and zoning hearing, that there's a cart path that is into the railroad right away. So, but I assume there'll be some type of verbal or written agreement as to that's okay, right?
Correct. We've already coordinated with on that matter and have written documentation from the railroad. I want to make sure I had the written documentation part.
Okay.
I know we've had verbal. I want to make sure we had written and we can provide that.
I know that was noted during the planning and zoning board.
Yes, sir.
The other, it appears that there's an encroachment from the parking lot, at least on these drawings, into the PPOA, the homeowner's right-of-way, which is the road. Is there going to be a similar written agreement from the relative to that encroachment?
Yeah, very similar. In fact, it's owned and maintained by the same management perspective there, and so yeah, it's the same kind of agreement from that perspective.
So before you go too far in the construction process, you'll have those type of agreements? Okay.
Correct.
Other comments? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for bringing up the storm water management issue. I had a concern there too, so thank you, and thank you for what you're proposing there. Could we go back to the parking part? We had a slide or two there where you discussed parking, and I just wanted to make sure I quoted accurately.
Right there.
Yeah, okay, that's part of it. The parking is going from 116 to 318, which is a phenomenal increase. That's I don't know, about 175% increase. How are you pulling that off? And is that some of that subterranean, or is it all above ground? Or that's quite a lot of parking. And we like parking.
Yeah,
So
it's just mostly in a reconfiguration and better utilization of the land in and of itself. So the previous kind of configuration of the parking was kind of one-sided and not quite as efficient as it could have been. And so that's one section of it. And then the other component of it is that the overflow parking for events and those kinds of things on the opposite side. So if you look on the at Plan West of the drive, we've added additional parking spaces over there in an efficient manner. And again, just the layout of the parking lot overall on the eastern side to be just a more efficient layout is where we got most of the parking gains to accommodate both, the use of the clubhouse and expanded clubhouse, but there's not intended to be any kind of parking deck or subterranean parking on it.
Which ones are intended to be gravel?
The north one.
The north, just north of Glasgow.
And if you can find this slide, there was a slide there in the parking where you talked about trips. And there was a phrase in there that I didn't get it all. Let me see, I want to quote.
432
Yeah.
trips.
Yeah, I think it's just
Yeah,
past the
where was
parking
that?
one,
This one?
last bullet.
There it is. No, you were back. I think you were back one more. Yeah. The club, I'm quoting here, operates as a membership only. It's appropriate to assume and project internal capture of internal trips. Am I wrong to assume that this enhanced clubhouse with all this additional parking and all the fitness center and all that is you're not factoring in the likelihood or possibility of external usage of that clubhouse for events like many clubs do, where they rent out the facility for a day or have an evening event? Is that in this plan? Because again, the club operates as membership only, but the clubhouse can entertain large amounts of visitors as it sees fit.
Yeah, I would answer that in the frame of there's events currently with the clubhouse and of that nature, and so what the anticipated study kind of reviewed was more of based on land use code, specifically on the types of uses inside of the building and how that kind of relates to what could be generally expected. It's a relatively conservative and I would say very conservative kind of estimate on total trips generated with that 432. What is what I would say a realized version of what you would feel and see is that most of that traffic is quote unquote internal capture. I wouldn't say that all of it is internal capture. There would be some external, whether that's, again, Alex kind of hinted at, whether it's deliveries or staff or whatever it may be. There will be some additional trips from that perspective, external trips from that perspective. And there will be, at times when there are events, there will be event traffic, but that's not considered during a typical trip generation because those are one-time events and they're harder. It's a different way of calculating the trip calculation. The way trips are calculated predominantly is what is consistent with the land use and how often on a daily basis you recommend see that kind of information coming in.
You're not anticipating an event every day.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I'll beat the drum one more time on the stormwater management. Is it fair to assume that relative to the gravel parking lot, that there'll be some type of apron to keep any gravel from washing out on Gray Abbey and/or, okay,
Yeah, that'll be, from a maintenance perspective, that'll be something that'll be entertained.
Right. Okay.
Both from wheel stop and/or wheel stop, something of that nature to kind of reduce the flow of gravel.
Thinking of the
into
washout
water.
most primarily. If it's the small bluestone, that can move around pretty quickly, but as long as there's an apron there to keep it from washing out on the road. So. Thank you.
We're still in the public hearing. Doug, is it appropriate to seek other comments from members?
I think we can open it up to, is there an additional presentation from the applicant? Nope. Okay, then yes, we can open up to
Okay.
members of the public.
Well,
could
go
just-
ahead, 1 minute. Go ahead,
Just
John.
follow, so you're saying that the methodology you use to arrive at 430 daily trips is different than what, say, the DOT might do if this were a new subdivision or something like that?
No, sir. The event traffic, I was comparing event traffic to the methodology we use. So event traffic is typically handled in a much different methodology, and typically it's not regulated because it isn't, like, it's either a one-time event or, certain times of a month type of event. I was more referring to that type of traffic as compared to the land use study that we did overall. The trip generation study that we created is exactly, we added a memorandum on top of it, but the trip study itself is exactly what DOT would require from a trip study perspective.
All right. Anything else? Because we do have a couple of people who've signed up to speak.
So as we move into the public comment section, I would say that after all public comments have been made, then at that point, the applicant or staff could address any comments that were made at once.
Okay, sounds fair. Thank you. All right, we have two individuals. First, we'll hear from Mr. Miller of McMichael Road in Pinewild.
And council. Two items I'd like to bring up. First one regards this, and the second one is something that I think needs to be looked at from the village council, which I identified when I started to look at the zoning, etc. The first one, if the expansion's approved, that I think there needs to be a requirement that all new and existing structures along with the perimeter be landscaped to reflect the standards of Pinewild. Currently, we're not seeing that. I think the biggest thing that if you're looking at the metal storage or cart building, both from Glasgow, McMichael perspective, McMichael Drive perspective, and from our driveway perspective, there is very little screening, and I would actually like to take some overgrown Chamaecyparis trees that the club planted back in 1992 to screen the golf cart, which have outlived their usefulness. But what I'm getting back from the country club is they're not going to screen, they will screen that portion, but not until the entire project is landscaped. Now, if you go out and visit the property, if you look at McMichael Drive and you look at the golf cart from our driveway, neither one of those areas are going to be impacted at all by the expansion. So my question is, as a homeowner, it's hard for me to believe it's going to be done properly if it can't be done now so that we can move forward with getting the Chamaecyparis trees down on our property. So I think that's a key thing. And the other thing, I think, as I was told that the council and planning and zoning is looking at updating zoning and ordinances this year. So when you look at the RD zoning, I think when you look at the RD zoning and it's in a residential neighborhood, I think there should be probably an additional zone such as RDR, which would reflect recreational zone residential. And that way you could restrict such things as metal storage buildings that really should be in industrial parks or large electrical control boxes, that they're eliminated, or they must be screened properly if they're in a residential area. Because just like the community's looking at the short-term rentals, maintaining the integrity of our neighborhoods, I think by having an RDR, it would help maintain the integrity of those neighborhoods that have RD zoning within them. Because that was one of the things that I identified when I went through my research. And I understand it can't be retroactive, but I think it also, by adding that zoning requirement, it would better reflect the vision of the Village of Pinehurst for all neighborhoods going forward. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Steele from Gray Abbey Drive. Please, sir, have a seat and introduce yourself.
Sorry for these old bones creaking coming up here. So my name is Zebulon Steele, 10 Gray Abbey Drive in Pinewell. Speaking again to the committee this evening, I thank you for your time. After listening to the testimony prior to and also going over the evidence of the last meeting that we attended, there was some discovery on my part, and several of you committee members have asked the questions that I had planned to ask up here. As the homeowner on 10 Gray Abbey, which at one time I was the only resident there for many, many years, now we see a change coming about, and I'm still not sure. Are there any agreements that was ever between the Pinewell HOA and the PCC as to the maintenance and the equitable beauty of that property? I asked that question for a reason. Here where we are, there's just an abundance of pine trees, and those pine trees present a major problem in storms, et cetera, roots growing under the ground, under the roads. So we have a conditional problem that's never going to go away with the preponderance of trees, and as difficult as it is to get hoppers to come around to facilitate cutting of those trees, they present a problem. Erosion is not going to be a problem on the street where I live, only because I live downgrade, and the water that comes on a heavy downpour from the country club, as you mentioned about drainage, I've been getting that for 11 years. Sufficient soil that I have to shovel out of the driveway, the street. So with the new parking lot coming, that's going to be gravel. I didn't see mentioned tonight, but you did mention that there's 3 entrances to the parking lot from Glasgow and on the other side, but not on Gray Abbey, as it was stated prior to. Is there not going to be an entrance there?
I don't know. I think we'll have someone else respond to that question. I don't have the answer to that.
Because it's just adjacent to my mailbox there, and I measured out 10 feet from my property line. I'm sorry, not 10 feet, but 50 feet. And pretty much I could live with that. 50 feet would be acceptable. But anything less than that, it just presents a problem to our property, as one of your members stated, with lights shining into our residence on that side of the house where my wife's office is, and bedrooms and et cetera. So that's the thing that we have to worry about, and then also the dust and other factors that come with all of that. So those are the things that I really want to bring a point to mention here to the committee tonight. And going further into the future, with all these things that we don't know about just yet, how is it going to affect property values on that street, primarily 10 Gray Abbey, if things don't go right? So I think I have confidence in your building team that they're going to make it right after the city makes their final decision and all the conditions are met, so many feet setback in this, I can accept. But anything less, it would become a problem in the future. So I hope that you can indulge yourself to help me in this symbiotic relationship that we've had. We fell in love with Pine Wall when we first moved here, and this is where we had planned to be for our remaining time, and we want to stay here. I don't want to be forced out under any condition, but this is our home, and we're just trying to protect it the best we can, as anyone would be. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Steele.
Could I get
Go
one
ahead.
clarification? You mentioned your first point, you talked about, or you asked whether there was any agreement between the Pine Wild HOA and something else. I didn't.
Well, the reason why I asked that question is because since we moved here, I took care of that, which is going to be your expansive parking lot. I took care of a third of that doing cleaning maintenance, which is not my job. That and the street, and nobody can ever tell me who the property belonged to. At least they didn't tell me. But now that I know that it belongs to the PCC, I'm sure going forward, even between where the parking lot stops to my property line, there's still going to be maintenance that has to be done, weeds, this and that, and I don't want to have to continue to spend resources to do
No, I understand. I didn't hear what, so the last piece was between the HOA and the PCC, Pine Wild Country Club.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's
Yes.
what I wasn't sure I understood.
Yes. One last point I'd like to make. I think one of the contractors over here mentioned about the orientation inside where the parking is going to be, and then when you ask the question about lights shining, if the cars are going to be pointed, how are the cars going to be appropriated for space in a gravel parking lot versus one that has lines defined where a car can park? How is that going to be controlled? That's the question I don't understand just yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. We'll see if, Alex, do you want to respond to any question raised or ask for assistance from the applicants?
I think both would be appropriate. What I could address, the last point about the sort of the organization of parking spaces within a gravel parking lot. Wheel stops will be required, so that is about the only way to manage the organization of those vehicles as they come onto that gravel parking space. Concrete wheel stops will be required within that gravel overflow, so that is the only organizational effort that would try to have the cars parked in the appropriate spot.
The orientation of those wheel stops would indicate head-in parking, for
Correct.
example? Okay.
I'm Fayetta Steele, 10 Gray Abbey Drive. And when you're asking about the orientation with the lights, they will be facing our house. Is that correct?
That's correct. The way it's currently designed, they will be correct.
Okay, and it would come in from,
If you can see the screen there, can you see the cursor up? I don't know, whichever one's kind of, and it doesn't help. There's not a contrast here. All right, so here's your property right here. Okay, this is the gravel overflow parking, and these spaces with the indicated wheel stops showing head in. So these, about 7 or so, and then a few here on this side would be oriented towards your property.
7 of the 64.
And then just a few more here, so maybe 3 or 4 more.
And then as far as plantings and shrubbery, what types of plantings are you considering? That could also be a barrier to the lights also. I'm
Sure,
just
so-
wondering what that-
So our standard is that a certain number of shrubs is based on a linear footage. So evergreen shrubbery, I believe at the rate of, it might be 1 per 25 linear feet. And then there's a number of trees that will have to be planted, I believe, at a rate of maybe 1 per 75 linear feet. Pine trees are typically used, of course, here. They're pretty columnal, so they're not going to provide as much of a shield from headlights as probably the shrubbery would. There is a minimum height at planting that is required.
Minimum height?
Correct.
Okay. And that's what you'll go for, is the minimum rather than any What's the maximum height?
There is not one.
There is not
No.
one, okay.
Big as it can be.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Alex, continue. Next question.
I think that's all I had that I could address. I think the other things are really recommendations that maybe the club or their applicant could maybe consider with
Go
those
ahead, you guys
improvements.
want to hit the,
So Tucker McKenzie again from Withers Ravenel. I'll start with Mr. Steele's few comments. The access points are still the same as they were previously proposed. And just so from that perspective, they're still as they were. And Faith, I believe, asked a question regarding traffic flow. And this is just an estimate, but most traffic flow is going to come off of Glasgow and take the first right if it's overflow, right? They're going to first come in and look for any parking they can by the clubhouse, and then would flow north on that right-hand side and find their first parking space they can, and then eventually flow out on the Gray Abbey side from an entrance and exit perspective. And again, not everybody's going to do that. Some people are just come in and find the first parking spot they can, so that's not a guarantee, but that's the anticipated flow. I think most of the other ones are addressed either by, from Mr. Steele's questions were in regards to additional details that'll be provided during the construction drawing process, whether that's details on the stormwater control devices to reduce the flow, and specifically how the landscaping and everything else that'll be provided as required. Again, making modifications to that what's already been submitted for any changes that may happen during the additional design period.
Are you anticipating storm drains within the parking lots?
There will be some storm drains for sure. We're also anticipating a naturalized swale, so a ditch in between to capture any additional overflow and direct it towards the stormwater control device.
Get in the right direction.
That's right. And then on the first gentleman's comments, I missed his name, so my apologies.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. But on that, we have a supplemental planting, additional planting provided from a screening perspective. As you know, as we heard the comment and concern earlier, so we have additional screening and planting. We have not submitted that yet. We needed to get through this process before we updated our construction drawings to make that submittal. But we do have additional supplemental planting, so above and beyond what the ordinance is requiring. We don't have a plan to kind of show what that is, but those have been, we do have those on the plan currently and intend to submit with those additional plans.
There was one suggestion made by one of the speakers regarding an RDR zoning, which I don't think you have anything to do with this at this point, but Alex, can you opine on what that would involve and so forth?
If you're talking about a new zoning district, that's a pretty severe undertaking,
Okay.
Especially to just address some landscape or screening mechanisms. I think most people would actually agree that our landscaping and screening standards here with the Village of Pinehurst is pretty high bar. It is pretty significant if you compare us to other jurisdictions. The comments of Mr. Miller are really related to a pre-existing condition that was there prior to any regulations that we would have imposed. So if, and that's not saying that a corrugated metal building is actually a prohibited design material in a non-residential district now. So any buffering standards that we have now would be far and above. But it does sound like there's been efforts between previous property owners at that lot and the club to try to screen that area as much as possible. And that's probably the best avenue from here and outside of the scope of course, of this public hearing or this consideration. But I do think landscaping is something and screening is something that often comes up, and certainly one of the items that, we will be addressing with the PDO update.
I would just add that any potential zoning change there would probably be triggered as down zoning, which we've had lots of discussions. It's probably not allowed.
At the moment.
At the moment, right. Any other comments? Say, Chris, did you have something you wanted to comment? Oh, okay. I see, Mr. Miller, you raised your hand. Is there something you wanted to?
I think when I talked about our residential change, certainly not just landscaping, but it would also be prohibiting things like large metal buildings that are more appropriate for industrial parks, large electrical boxes. Right now, there's no requirement that those things are even being screened, even the large electrical boxes, because I had reached out to the village before. So I think there's a lot of considerations there, and I think as far as requirements, you know, when I look at Zebulon's lot and we're talking about screening headlights, I have a degree in horticulture, and one shrub per 25 linear feet, even if you're planting Nellie Stevens hollies, I mean, to have one of those go 12 feet each way takes for years, and it's not going to be the healthiest shrub to get there. So if you're looking at screening the headlights, that requirement isn't even going to be near restricting the headlights to their property, because as we all know, trees aren't going to be restricting them because the trunks restrict very little light. Thank you.
Any other questions?
One thing on the total number of parking spaces, do I remember reading in the material we were given that the number that you were providing, 318, whatever the number was, that is in excess of any sort of minimum requirement? So you're substantially over that?
That's correct. And just to reiterate and again, it's you know, it'll be on the next drawing submittal, and we meet the ordinance requirements for this submittal. But we do intend to have additional screening both at that metal building and at Mr. Steele's property as well. So if I wasn't clear in that statement, that is the code minimum as required is what Alex was talking to. But we will have additional evergreen screening just to address that.
Thank you. I have a question for Alex. Is the rest of this process where the applicant provides further details and so forth, is that open to the public? Is that transparent, or how does that work for people who are going to follow this?
Well, they would have to have knowledge of or to submit a public records request to kind of follow those documents, but there will be no public participation through the process.
Okay, thank you.
And the staff couldn't entertain any public process for that. There would be an opportunity for an appeal, as there is for any administrative decision, once that decision is made. But again, everything related to this project will be based on the minimum standard that's already been adopted. Anything above and beyond cannot be required.
All right. I guess the only other comment I'll make is obviously the applicant's here and heard from some residents. Factor that into your thinking. Doesn't sound like there's a lot of problems that you can't overcome there. So, good neighbors make good neighbors.
I'd like to throw something else on there
Go ahead.
in that vein. So Alex, the requirement there is that they're meeting the minimum standards. Does this current project meet those standards?
At the general concept plan phase, absolutely.
Okay, and the purpose of the administrative hearing that we're having is to determine that, correct?
Is to determine that, but also have a public notification and opportunity to view that project or have understanding that a significant scale project will be imminent.
Okay, I appreciate that. So as we're looking at this, we're identifying whether it's met the standards or not, and obviously wouldn't be here if it had not on presenting it. I will attest that for many, many years, Zebulon Steele's house is on my walk for my exercise on a multi-time per week, hopefully. But I have never seen anybody more meticulous in getting pine cones out of his yard and also out of the properties around him. And I do know that there's a lot of pride that goes into that, as well as with other neighbors. And so while the minimum standard is being met, I would encourage this project to be a good neighbor and exceed the standards. Work with them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think, Jeff, just one clarification. We're not here to determine. We have been told that this project meets the standards
Correct.
by people of the technical
Fair enough.
We've not ascertained that ourselves.
That is correct, but we're listening to our staff as to what goes on, is being presented to us to see if anything falls out of what we expect to be the norm.
And I would possibly tag on to this. Our purpose is not to micromanage this. The standards have been met. I'm wondering, under the guise of being a good neighbor and looking at this orientation, whether maybe you could do without those 7 spots and voluntarily, and therefore the issue of screening becomes less of an issue. It's not for us to require that. I would suppose we probably could require it, but I don't know that we want to get to that level of detail.
No.
So I might throw that out as a suggestion, since you're over the guideline. 311 versus 318 doesn't seem like a big sacrifice to me.
So Alex, during the construction drawing process, if in fact a few parking slots were lost, however, it still met the requirements, that wouldn't be an issue, is that correct?
318 or 311 makes no difference.
Worth noting. Thank you, John, for that quick math. All right. We are prepared to, yes,
Thank you, guys.
close, unless there's something else. Is there a thought of the council as to what we should do with public hearing number 1?
Mr. Mayor, just confirm that there are no other members of the public that wish
Yeah,
to speak on this.
I should have asked that. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Hearing none, there are none.
I move to adjourn the public hearing number 2 and re-enter the regular meeting. Excuse me.
Public hearing number 1.
Yeah, sorry. I move
Okay.
to approve a proposed major site plan for Pine Wild Country Club located at 4 Glasgow Drive and further identified as PID number 0002522 and 0002526.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so adopted, and
I move to adjourn public hearing number 1 and re-enter the regular meeting.
thank you.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now going to discuss 8B, which is public hearing number 2, which is consider amendments to the 219 comprehensive plan. And I gather, Alex, you will be back there. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider amendments to the 219 comprehensive plan, specifically the areas and topics of balancing conservation and growth, conservation subdivisions, references to the Western Connector, and focus areas 2 and 5. Go right ahead, Alex.
All right, so you took the words right out of my mouth. Again,
You put them in my mouth, so that's how you take them.
another symbiotic relationship tonight. All right.
A beautiful
Right.
thing.
So just the first couple quick slides as a review for everyone about comprehensive plans. So now with the inaction in 2019 of the consolidated general statutes enabling legislation for planning, zoning, and jurisdictions in the state of North Carolina, a condition of actually adopting and applying zoning regulations is that a local government shall adopt and reasonably maintain a comprehensive plan or a land use plan. These are adopted by the governing board after advice and consultation of the local planning board. The adoption and amendment of such plans is a legislative decision, so we're totally switching gears from the previous public hearing, and this legislative decision process shall follow the same process for zoning text amendments. Comprehensive plans are advisory in nature and have no regulatory effect. Our current comp plan was approved or adopted in October of 2019. It contains, among several things, including a conservation and growth map, which kind of functions as like a future land use map, which contains 5 focus areas, which we'll talk at least about 3 of those 5 in later slides, 10 strategic opportunities, 7 guiding principles, and 115 implementation strategies, which we have actually accomplished several of those since October of 2019. Again, comprehensive plans, Village Council has adopted the 2019 plan to kind of help guide policy and has recently adopted and amended a policy on when Village Council should consider amending the plan. And this is to avoid disparities between the plan and any new or existing emerging conditions and making sure that, again, we're following that statutory responsibility that we're reasonably maintaining it. Early this year, you guys reviewed the plan, had a couple of work session discussions over some areas that you all identified as areas that should be further looked at for amendments. Again, balancing conservation and growth, and really specifically, the topic of conservation neighborhoods in the ETJ, specifically in Focus Area 1. The Western Connector, whether or not it's viable still, and the need to have that referenced anywhere in the comprehensive plan or any strategies. Focus Area 2, which is the Pinehurst South NC5 highway area, need to potentially look at updates to traffic patterns to alleviate congestion there in that area. And finally, Focus Area 5, the area along the North Carolina Highway 211 corridor, to look at potentially adopting an overlay zoning district there and collaboration with other neighboring jurisdictions to ensure compatible growth. So conservation neighborhoods in the Focus Area 1, which is the greater portion of our ETJ in the southwest area of our district. So in that area, the comp plan does say that the village study the concept of conservation neighborhoods specifically in this area. The benefits in the plan mentions that conservation neighborhoods can conserve natural resources and habitat, also have more efficiency with the infrastructure that would be required to serve those neighborhoods, greater walkability, and would also, with that conservation of that natural area, potentially preserve the rural character there. The plan further acknowledges that in order to doing so, there's going to be some significant amendments needed to the Pinehurst Development Ordinance or the PDO, and strict design standards to make sure that those new neighborhoods would be keeping in with the character of Pinehurst. Some of the, let's say, cons to what we've heard from implementing such a strategy to have those conservation neighborhoods is actually contrary to what the plan currently states, was that conservation neighborhoods could actually destroy that existing rural character in Focus Area 1. So again, implementation strategy 2.1 in the plan says consider allowing these specifically in that area and make some amendments that are necessary to the PDO. Other mentions to conservation neighborhoods within the plan are under ensure high quality development, reduce parking needs and improvement in guiding principle 4, conserve land and protect wildlife under guiding principle 7, and a definition in the glossary. There's an image there from the comp plan that shows kind of what the intent of conservation subdivisions and how they can kind of meet some of those goals that I just mentioned. All right, the Western Connector. So the Western Connector is shown here on this plan as this purple or magenta colored hash line that kind of goes through or bisects that area on the east and west side of Focus Area 1. It's been talked about for years and years and years and years, and it's always been a topic of contention in the county itself. It's a 4-lane divided bypass, or at least intended to be, from North Carolina Highway 211, so providing another north-south corridor to try to alleviate congestion, especially with the increased volumes that have been along NC Highway 5. The concerns to the West Connector have always been the negative impact on that rural character in that area, Focus Area 1. The viability of the project, we're kind of hearing more and more now that that's just a terrible unlikelihood that, one, that any such bypass would alleviate any congestion, and whether or not the needs that would ever score high enough to actually come to fruition, or the plausibility of actually getting it to occur anywhere in that area. There are numerous references, I believe maybe up to upwards of 40-some within the plan itself, so being able to actually remove all references in the plan is probably not a likelihood, but there's ways, Doug and I have discussed, we could adopt maybe a new appendice or something to indicate that, no further consideration for these references to the West Connector or any policy recommendations related to that. And again, most of these are under Guiding Principle 4, which is the topic of traffic and moving around the village. So the Focus Area 2, the Pinehurst South area, of course, back in 2023, the Village Council adopted a small area plan and a form-based guidance plan, and then followed up with some amendments to the PDO, which I would expect to be heavily further reviewed as part of the PDO update. And the topic of concern here, of course, just right on the heels of the discussion with the Western Connector, is to try to do what we can to alleviate traffic congestion in the area and make sure that some realistic traffic patterns can be considered. As we all discuss this more as a group, we do realize that this is probably better handled with any PDO updates and not necessarily needed to have any amendments to the comp plan. And then finally, Focus Area 5, the 211 corridor. Most of that portion is it's in our ETJ, south of Highway 211, as indicated on the map there. I chose that image because it shows that all those parcels are undeveloped, so no existing development there along that area. So we identified that that's another area that we should consider a small area plan, seek ways to ensure that any type of growth along that area is compatible and is desirable. One of the ideas is to consider a highway corridor overlay district, which we will be reviewing as part of the PDO update. And there's also a lot of recommendations in the comprehensive plan because it was kind of going through the process at the time the plan was largely being developed for the village to consider expanding its ETJ so that the village would have development authority over any of that growth along that corridor. Now we know that is unlikely, so the focus has kind of shifted, and I believe has been recently, Village Council has directed the staff to begin to work and collaborate with our neighboring jurisdictions, namely Moore County and Taylortown. As you see the map on the top right corner, the green area indicated to be Taylortown's jurisdiction. The gray shaded area being unincorporated Moore County, however, some of that within our ETJ. So partner with those two folks to see if we can maybe have some sort of overlapping development standards to ensure that compatible growth. So again, following the legislative process, the Planning and Zoning Board held a public hearing on April 3rd, and they ultimately recommended the following to Village Council on this topic to consider, make sure that's clear, consider removing references to the Western Connector, continue to address the traffic and alleviate congestion in the Pinehurst South Focus Area 2 with updates to the PDO, and consider implementation or amending implementation strategy 2.17 to include collaborating with neighboring communities along the NC Highway 211 corridor to ensure compatible growth. And lastly, Village Council has the option to, after conducting the public hearing and receiving public comment on these topics, you can consider these and the input given by the Planning and Zoning Board. And after conducting the hearing, you have the ability, if you would like to entertain amendments, you must do so by approving and adopting an ordinance. After closing the public hearing, you can do that and move to that agenda item. Ordinance 2507 has been drafted for council's consideration. You may also close the public hearing and decide to defer action on any amendments to a later meeting. And lastly, you do have the ability, if you feel that other things need to be considered or additional input needed, you can continue this public hearing, and if you do so, you must be clear and state the specific date, time, and place. And that concludes my presentation on what we have sort of already discussed kind of as a group, but this is the execution of that.
Thank you, Alex. Mr. Mayor, I don't think we actually entered into a, we had a motion to enter into the public hearing, so if we could do that, and then we could, whoever wants to speak can.
Okay.
I move to recess the regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 2.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Now repeat it all
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
No, just kidding.
Start over.
Yeah.
So you have the ability to
Alex?
If I may add something. So we talked about this, like Alex said, a few months ago, and we had a few ideas. P&Z looked at those. They kind of agree in concept that those are ideas we should move forward with, and the ordinance that we have drafted aligns with that. So this could be a very quick process if the public hearing goes, or if there's not a lot of.
Could you pull up the ordinance?
I
on the
can,
screen?
yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe, before we go to the ordinance, mechanically, if we approve the ordinance, does that mean that the extensive document, which is the comprehensive plan, will effectively be republished with the amendments that we're discussing here?
again, and I think maybe that's something we probably should discuss just so council's clear on what an amended document would actually look like. Again, I made reference to the Western Connector, right? So it shows up on maps. It's mentioned in implementation strategies. It's mentioned elsewhere in the document. Actually going through and physically crossing or deleting that is not likely. So what we would need to do is probably create a new appendix that has a list of amendments and when, reference the ordinance and what that action was. I think that's the cleanest way that Doug and I have discussed to be able to execute.
That's exactly what I'm getting at, and I think that sounds like it makes sense. I think the conservation neighborhoods occur in fewer places. It might be possible to delete them, but maybe the process you've described will work just as well for that.
Potentially. And I mean, having the source document and having the actual software to pull that up and make those changes is, recall we kind of went through this with the small area plan after, you know, editing a PDF or other. It makes for a messy.
Yeah, I would suggest where you can delete it, but do what you've expressed beyond the appendix,
Yeah,
because that can be confusing to readers in the future.
Yeah, we want to make it clear to everyone. And,
Yeah, that's fine.
And the intent of this, and us also kind of fast-tracking this, was so that it would be available to inform our PDO update process, which I think it has done that and will continue to do that.
And I do also think we want to be very clear that there's no intent at all by this council to expand the ETJ. So we don't leave that out there hanging out anywhere in the document.
But I think also, Doug, that even if we mechanically do it via an appendix, I think that will satisfy the requirement that the SMPO will have when it develops its MTP, that we have updated our plan within 5 years of.
Yes, I think it will.
Okay.
That's a good point. Thank you. Okay. So we are now in a public hearing. We have heard from Alex. We will ask, and I want to know if anyone from the council has any other questions for Alex at this time, though we can revisit it after we hear from the public. None. Okay. Is there anybody here who would like to come forward and pose a question or discuss this draft ordinance? You don't have to have signed up earlier. You can raise your hand now and come forward. No? Okay. Well, I think in just fairness, let me read this ordinance so that if someone's listening and wonders what we're talking about. An ordinance amending the Village of Pinehurst Comprehensive Plan, that whereas the Village Council of the Village of Pinehurst.
Pat, I'm sorry. If I'm reading this correctly, if we're going to consideration of the ordinance itself, should we close the public hearing?
Yes.
But I wanted to read this for the public to hear.
Fine.
That was my whole point.
Fine.
So whereas the Village Council of the Village of Pinehurst adopted a new comprehensive plan on October 22nd, 2019, for the purpose of guiding goals, policies, and programs intended to guide the present and future physical, social, and economic development of the jurisdiction. And whereas the comprehensive plan helps ensure coordinated, efficient, and orderly development based on an analysis of present and future community needs. Whereas said comprehensive plan may be amended from time to time to avoid disparities between the comprehensive plan, market and economic realities, actions taken as specified in the plan, and existing and emerging conditions. And whereas the Village Council has adopted a policy on comprehensive plan adoption, review, and amendments, and whereas the Planning and Zoning Board held a public hearing on April 3rd, 2025, and recommended the comprehensive plan be amended, and whereas a public hearing was held on April 22nd, today, that really concludes the meat of what we're discussing and have been discussing. So we have no other comments from the council. We have apparently no one who wants to come forward from the public to speak at this time. Are there any last questions for Doug or Alex before we move forward?
Well, this will be an amendment, and we could note within the document where, in the beginning of a chapter, for example, where it has an amendment, you might want to reference the amendment. We're not going to publish any new paper document. We could note those in the electronic version.
So the document will be housed in all the applicable spots. We'll have updated, amended document on the website. We will have one on file here with the clerk as required. And any other hard copies, if you will only be as a request by the council or any staff members that need it.
Right.
Could you roll that up a little further, just so we can get to the second page with the, we'll repeat these when we get to the point of the next step. So we can entertain a motion now.
I move to approve ordinance 25-06.
Sorry, we need to close the public hearing.
Okay, let's, okay, close the
I
public.
move to close the public hearing.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those in
Go to
favor?
the-
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're out of the public hearing. Now, back to work.
You want me to make the,
It would be appropriate, yes.
okay, good. I move to approve ordinance 25-07, amending the Village of Pinehurst 2019 Comprehensive Plan as submitted.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have adopted such ordinance, 2507. Okay. Thank you for your work, both Alex, Doug, and the Planning and Zoning Board. I sat through that meeting, so I know they had a good discussion of it. And now we have before us a resolution opposing the state legislature's attempts to remove ETJ authority for North Carolina cities and towns, which would include us. Doug, do you want to?
So
Phil-
each year, this seems to be a recurring trend that someone at the legislature proposes that ETJs be removed. It seems like this year maybe that's getting a little more traction or noise than normal. So there's a few bills. We mentioned a few specifically in here, but I think overall just the idea that we value the ETJ as a planning tool and as a tool to preserve the character of our community. And with that, we have this resolution that we can forward to our legislative delegation, letting them know how we feel about the ETJ issue.
Okay. But just by way of a little history, I think a couple of years ago there was a generic bill that addressed this in a statewide fashion. It did not pass. Last year, there was a bill put forward by a legislator in another county that was specifically aimed just at Moore County, to strip the Moore County municipalities of their ETJ authority. And we had a pretty good public debate on that, and it was withdrawn. It was an amendment to a bill, and it was withdrawn, and we were told that there'd be a study bill about the topic and would be revisited again in the future. There has been no study bill, but there has been a new bill, again put in, SB 314, that addresses this in a statewide fashion. There, evidently, in the Senate bill that passed the other night, the budget bill, there was a reference to Senate Bill 314, and it was proposing to allow counties with a population in excess of 70,000 to maintain their ETJ authority, and but for counties with less than that, it would be removed. So I take that as a sign of progress, but it's only a part of a bill moving through the legislative Vegematic process that we all watch. So this is specifically designed to help us maintain this ETJ, which we've had for some 70 years, which I think has served as a wonderful tool to help us manage and control growth. This resolution is similar to our neighbor, Southern Pines' resolution, and it's similar to various other of the 11 municipalities, all who have gone on record in the past in opposition to us, to the municipalities in Moore County losing their ETJ authority. So we're very much in the mainstream of this debate among our fellow municipalities, and I think this is a sensible resolution and a position for the Village of Pinehurst to take. So I'll open it up to comments.
If I could expand on what I commented on in my report at the beginning. At the work session, the representative from the county's delegation in Raleigh offered the opinion that ETJs will be going away at some point. It was a prediction that this was the direction the wind was blowing in Raleigh. He said, I don't know if it's 2 years, 7 years, or longer. That was just, he said, but you should make plans assuming that will happen. That was a statement by that person. Although it was a work session and there was no formal public comment, they did allow the mayor of Southern Pines to speak, and who spoke very similar to what Pat had suggested, saying that Southern Pines viewed this as an important tool, the maintenance of ETJ, as an important tool for them, and certainly critical as they are in the process of revising their land use plan as well. So I passed that along as additional color from a week ago Monday at the Board of Commissioners meeting.
Okay. Other comments from council members?
I've got a couple.
ahead,
Pat, you gave some
Doctor.
background on there, but you didn't give any background as to why it's being presented. Why is this being pushed forward?
There are some people elsewhere, because there's not a single municipality that's advocating it. But there are some people elsewhere that are not fond of ETJs. They've been around a long time. So that's why.
Well, for not having any municipalities for it, it's certainly gathering a lot of support. Any democracy or democratic republic, it's a social contract, and governments exist by the consent of the people. And we just heard Melinda Brown talk about something, and it's probably serendipitous that she's coming in because it was a business issue she's discussing, but she did make the comment that she doesn't know us. And was she allowed to vote in the election for us?
Our municipal election.
No. So we are making decisions, and she does not have a vote. From my perspective, that's un-American. And it doesn't fall into our value structure because governments exist by the consent of the people, and she never had an opportunity to consent. I thought her presentation was deafening because it's talking about her not being allowed to vote on what the ETJ is. Now, granted, it still may have been the same had she been voting, but I don't think that we should have control over areas without the people having a chance to vote on that. So I do not support.
Okay, well, the people have a chance through their elected representatives as to whether or not they'd want to continue something that's been in place for 65 or 70 years.
Okay.
So this is not a new proposal.
I understand that. You gave some background to it. I understand it.
Defending the status quo that's been around for a long time doesn't make it necessarily correct, but there is absolutely no municipality in the county of Moore that disagrees with the position we're taking.
I understand. And typically your opinion is because of where you sit, not where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting behind a desk that controls the ETJ right now. I got that. I understand it's to our advantage for Pinehurst to maintain that.
Yes.
I don't think from my philosophical views that that's appropriate because they don't have a chance to vote. So I do not support us going against this. I think the ETJ should be eliminated.
Okay. Well,
okay.
Go ahead. Any others? Go ahead.
I partially agree with you. Where I disagree is that it is not a mystery to people when they move to this area that they're in an ETJ. They don't pay taxes to us, and they know that at the time, and they make a decision. Some of the people who live in the ETJ live there specifically because of what it offers them from a more rural standpoint and what have you. So I don't know that there is a perfect solution to this. I thought that a former member, elected not to run, of the county commission who lives at the extreme edge of the village limits, but whose across the street neighbor is in the ETJ, said, my neighbor knows exactly what the deal is. He knows he doesn't get to call, and this was Southern Pines, doesn't get to call the Southern Pines Police Department. If someone's breaking into his house, he has to call the county. So there is some aspect of this that is the people's choice. they chose to live there, and they knew what the deal was when they chose to live there. I make that observation. It does not seem to me, look, that beyond our little realm here, the state is growing, and there is pressure to find places to build houses all over the state, not just in Moore County. And I personally suspect that is what is behind this at some higher level, at some Raleigh level. Whether that's right for us or not, I think we need to look to find a happy medium that respects her rights. And I did find some of her comments to be deafening. I agree with that. I don't know what the specifics are. We'll get to those. We will not get to those, but staff will get to those, and hopefully there can be a resolution. I thought it was interesting that someone from Southern Pines is reporting, because they don't have any contiguous boundary, I don't think, with that area of our ETJ. I don't know how someone in Southern Pines would ever have this complaint. And I also don't think our noise ordinance applies to the ETJ.
Yeah, no, that's in Aberdeen
This
border.
this began as a noise complaint over whatever business she's running, so, in any event.
Yeah, we do, obviously, staff will get to the bottom of that.
Yes,
But-
staff will go through that, and she's been here 25 years, or running the business 25 years. I imagine she's been here longer than that. I would doubt that she thought about the ETJ as she moved into the area, or, I think she said she was been here 60 years from the start, wasn't it? Lived here for 60 years? So I'm not sure how long-
I think she said that,
I'm
yes.
not sure how long the ETJ has been around. Maybe it was then also. The bottom line to it is I doubt the ETJ made any impact on her whatsoever, or whether she cared about it, until the fact she's now having her business being threatened. Okay, so there's lots of people who come in and don't look at it from that side. I understand the point. I will agree that the ETJ gives Pinehurst more authority and more protection. Okay, in Pinehurst's interests, I understand that. But I don't think it's appropriate to take away other people's interests from that in lieu of that. I don't think it's right for us to do it, because they don't have the voting rights to it. That's where I'm coming from. I don't want to belabor it. I know this is going to be a 1-4 vote again, okay, and 4-1, whatever the case may be. But I think it's important to look at it for people's rights. Thank you.
Okay, we have very few tools of which to help us manage growth in our village and around our village. One of our tools is our zoning ordinances, and those that we adopt within the laws of the state of North Carolina. This tool, which has been around for many, many years, the ETJ, is another tool. I've never heard from a resident of the ETJ who said to me, you need to do something to get rid of this ETJ. We don't like it here. But I've heard from plenty of them who said either we moved here because we liked the way the ETJ is being managed, or they basically say, please don't change it. We didn't really understand it, but we like this situation. And I think that's being responsive in a representative democracy way. And I think the reason there is so much public opposition from municipalities, and I'll go on a limb and say to the vast majority of people who live in ETJs, is because that is exactly the way they feel. So
I've heard people not like it, and we just heard today from someone who doesn't like it.
Well, yes.
Okay, maybe that's the single person that you've
Could
heard
be.
from. I've heard multiple other people on this, and ultimately, Pat, no matter how you want to cut this, and you say in a representative democracy this may be the route forward, if you're taking away somebody's right to elect the people who are representing them, that argument's not going to fly. Okay, that doesn't cut. That's what you're doing. You're taking away their right to representation.
No, I don't think we're not taking it away. Right now, they don't.
Then
vote
let
for
the
us.
county decide, and then they can vote on the county. That's fine. That's where it would go anyway. The county would then decide this.
Well, the county hasn't taken a position yet.
Well, okay, the county hasn't taken a position. Fine. I guess I'm talking philosophically here of what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the difference in the politics there. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Now, I'm really not talking about the philosophical arguments. I'm talking about the practicality of a village looking out for the interests of its residents with using the tools they have, as limited as they are, in the world we live in this village and the surrounding areas. We don't have a lot of flexibility. This gives us that flexibility.
Doing the right thing is often hard.
It is. That's why I think this is the right thing to do. All right, having discussed that, unless anybody has anything else to add? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 25-14 opposing the state legislature's attempts to remove ETJ authority for North Carolina cities and towns as contained in Senate Bill 314.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye,
Let the
or nay,
record-
rather, sorry.
Let,
Nay.
gotcha. Let the record say, state there was a 4-1 vote on this. Motion adopted. Okay, we are now on to item 11. Regular business, and 11A, which is Enterprise Fleet Management Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So we're here to discuss with you and present for your consideration a change to the way that we replace vehicles through our village fleet system. I'll give you a little background on how we got to this point. Davey Sewell and I, probably last August or September, began speaking about having an objective way to review and analyze our fleet to make sure that we're replacing them at the right time. We're trying to make sure that we right-size the fleet. We look to have healthier fleets and newer vehicles with the safety features that are on more modern vehicles. And also look to maximize the return we get on the vehicle. So as the operating cost and the age of the vehicle intersect, when is the right time to sell it to get the most that we can? And we're not receiving a great deal of positive feedback through doing that through gov deals, or positive results from that. We're also looking to make sure the fleet is cost effective. So part of that came about one day I answered a phone call, and it was Josh Crickard from Enterprise talking about the program that they offer, and they're here tonight to present to you. So I'll ask Josh Crickard and Matt Byers if they'll come up to the table for the presentation, and Shannon will pull up the presentation. We believe in staff analyzing information that they've provided, and I feel like we really scrutinized their information that they've provided. We've been meeting since January, and we've asked the hard questions and are satisfied that they can provide a good product for us. We feel confident that it will not cost us any more, and think that we will save money in the long term by switching to Enterprise solutions. So Matt and Josh, council's ready to hear your presentation.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Joshua Crickard with Enterprise Fleet.
So we're going to attempt in 15 minutes to review what we've reviewed for the last 4 months with Carlton and Dana. So please stop me if we go too fast to get this information through, or if you have any questions that come up during the presentation.
It's a PDF, so I can roll through it if that helps.
Okay. Real quick, we'll talk about an executive summary, what our findings were after our initial few meetings, some references and current partners that we had Dana and Carlton reach out to, recommendation and fleet analysis, what the numbers say about the program and how it's going to affect the village long term, and then what the recommended services and next steps for us will be. Looking at the executive summary, during our initial meeting, we learned from Carlton just exactly what he said, that the vehicles were being kept for an extended cycle time. The current fleet was creating additional maintenance and fuel expenses. There were some lower resale values. There was some safety and image concerns, and that the way that the government or the village was operating was very similar to the way it's operated for a long time, which was buying vehicles off state contract, keeping them as long as they could, selling them on gov deals, and providing maintenance through an in-house shop and the fuel tanks on the property. What we were able to provide just through our analysis is that we can create a program that will result in about $700,000 in savings over a 10-year span. By doing so, we'll also lower the acquisition, the cash outlay on vehicles, reduce the cycle pattern. Dependent on the vehicle type, those cycle patterns can be anywhere from 2 years to 5 years, or possibly longer if the economic situation indicates. And then maximizing the resale value using Enterprise's infrastructure to be able to resell vehicles at a much better clip than what's being done now through gov deals. And then just levelize the budget as much as possible. Part of the program's long-term sustainability is keeping the budget level as vehicle cost rises and needs arise over time. And then just having us on site to provide expert opinions and recommendations. And a lot of that comes from just looking at what's the right vehicle, what's the right term, what's the right funding mechanism for each piece of the business. I mean, and also one thing to note on here too is looking at keeping the equity of the vehicles inside the department that is selling the vehicles so they can maintain their budget long-term as well. Some of the government entities that we are currently working with, League of Municipalities is a customer of ours. As you can see here, Halifax County, I'm not going to go through all of these, but all of these were given to Dana and Carlton to reach out to ask questions. You know, it's easy to say from my seat how well this is going to work for the village, but they could find out firsthand from our clients how we worked long-term for them. And many of them we worked through very unique circumstances of COVID over the last 5 years and coming out of that and what could be some different economic uncertainty times moving forward and how we can handle that as well.
Can I jump in there and just add? So Aberdeen, one of our neighbors, they joined, about 12 months ago, a year ago?
About 2.5 years ago.
Okay. Anyway, Carlton's talked to them, and they're happy with the process. And also Stokes County, which where Jeff Sanborn went, is also a member. So that was nice that we could get honest feedback from them as well.
And at the heart of it is we can do a lot of things for the village. Now, not everything on this list makes sense for the village. You guys are in a very good position with your in-house shop. You're in a very good position right now with your on-site tanks. So we were looking at areas that we could benefit the village. And where we really looked at how we could help was the acquisition piece, the finance and credit lines, the aftermarket customization, and then possibly telematics, which will help us look at reducing fleet size over time by looking at vehicles that are underutilized or vehicles that could be possibly shared by different departments. And then the key piece here is the vehicle resale side, just being able to utilize local dealerships to resell these government vehicles, which are gold based on the low miles that they go and the type of vehicles that are operating. And how we do this is through our local account team. So if you guys move forward with this, you will be assigned a client strategy manager and account fleet coordinator. The client strategy manager is local to the Raleigh market, and they will meet with Dana and Carlton several times per year, also with Dewey as well to get the operating cost from the in-house shop, to provide analysis, look at year-over-year costs, look at ways to continue to reduce expenses moving forward, to look at the right vehicles and right engine as they come up. There's multiple engine options now. Hybrid engines are becoming more popular. Electric engines will come down the line. To look at those and determine what is the right thing to do for the village and have the backing of data. We manage at Enterprise 2.2 million vehicles, and we utilize that data to determine what is the right holding period and what is the right vehicle to get. And for every application, the manufacturer may be slightly different based on the return on investment of those vehicles over time. And then we look at every aspect of vehicle cost. You know, most people that we talk to, the first thing they think of is how much can they buy a vehicle for, how long can they run it, and what can they sell it for. Well, if you look at this cost, this is looking at 15 years of hold time at 7,500 miles a year, which is very similar to what you guys are currently doing. The depreciation cost of a vehicle is only 26%. So we are looking at the entire aspect of this with Dewey's information, because that in-house shop keeps accurate records. And we're looking at it with fuel economy, with repairs, with administrative cost, to look at what's the right length of time to hold that vehicle and how to sell it to maximize its value and provide equity back into the next vehicle that it's going to replace to lower payments moving forward. And as I mentioned before, every vehicle has a point of diminishing returns. It's part of our job is to find that point of diminishing returns. I can tell you now, we've looked at everything on a 5-year lease term right now. That term may change. Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty with tariffs coming, a lot of uncertainties with the uncertainty on the 26 model year. So we looked at everything from a 5-year lease term. But our client strategy managers will meet with you guys every year to determine is that the right length of time. There is no penalty to move a vehicle up in its cycle. There is no penalty to push a vehicle back in its cycle if the financial aspect of it proves that that's the right way to go. And there's no way we will do that on our own. We'll give you guys the advice, give you the recommendation, and ultimately the decision is up to you to whether to move forward or not. But yeah, you'll be armed with the data of what happens if you do and what happens if you don't from that aspect. And every vehicle can be different. Half-ton trucks may be different than three-quarter-ton trucks, may be different than one-ton trucks. Will definitely be different than police interceptors as far as how long to keep a vehicle in your fleet based on resale. But right now, the vehicles you guys operate in your fleet that we're taking a look at are a lot of pickup trucks and a lot of SUVs, and they hold their resale value so well, and you guys get such good buy from a government perspective, and your mileage patterns are so low that we can reduce the depreciation where you're spending less annually in depreciation over the first 5 years than you are annually over 13 years for keeping that vehicle longer, and you're avoiding all the maintenance and repair costs that affect the vehicle at the end of its life. This is an example of what the open-ended leasing model looks like. Now, leasing, I know, gets a bad term. People think of leasing as dealership lease, where there's over-mileage penalties, where there's wear and tear penalties. None of that exists in our world. Leasing is just financing down to a residual value for us. So if you look at this, this is an F-250 Super Cab. State contract pricing is $45,667. On our leasing structure, we would have you lease it down to $86,76, which is the unpaid principal of the vehicle. So over 5 years in this analysis, we'd have you lease it down to that number, knowing at the end of 5 years, that vehicle is worth $27,000. So when we sell that vehicle for $27,000 on your behalf, there's $18,324 in equity that is your money. That most instances, most government entities apply that to the replacement vehicle to lower its payment. In this scenario, as you can see, you're only paying $36,991 of that vehicle over 6 years, but you're getting back an equity of $18,324. So all in, you're paying about $18,000 in depreciation over 5 years. So if you look at the next slide, we take that $18,324 and apply it to that same vehicle. Say that vehicle is going to be replacing the original one. That vehicle starts off as a $27,343 vehicle. We have you go down again to that $86,76 unpaid principal where you're financing that over 5 years. They're still selling that vehicle for $27,000. There's $18,324 in equity again. But as you can see in this analysis, you're only paying a principal of $311 per month on that vehicle moving forward. $18,000 would roll over to the next vehicle 5 years later, and we would continue to do this again and again, so that instead of getting the big ebbs and flows of the cash purchases, the first vehicle payment will be the highest, but as we're continuing to apply equity moving forward, the monthly principal of that vehicle goes drastically down, and we can keep you guys pretty static as far as your budget moving forward, just by using today's vehicles, the dollars in today's vehicles to pay for tomorrow's. So this is the analysis that we ran. We looked at 21 different vehicle types. I know there's a lot going on in this analysis, but what we looked at is what vehicles you had over 10 years old, which is in that block. And then we looked at what's the right way to cycle this program in. So if you look at how we're doing this, we took every single vehicle type that you guys have, which over 73 vehicles is 21 different vehicle types. We will help with that as well as making sure that the right department has the right vehicle type. The average age of the vehicles are 8.3 years old currently, and your average annual miles is 5,600 miles per year. If you look, we're looking at year one replacing 18 vehicles, which is not too far removed from what you guys did in 2023. But that 18 vehicles represents any vehicle right now that is currently over 13 years old or has 130,000 miles. So we are getting rid of your oldest offenders first, which will drastically reduce the operating cost of your fleet and also free up your shop. Because the vehicles now will go back to preventative maintenance mode only, as opposed to those older vehicles now are dealing with costly repairs. In fiscal year 2026 and beyond, we're looking at vehicles currently that are 8 years old and have over 20,000 miles, which is that 16 vehicles in year 2026, 16 vehicles in 2027, 10 vehicles in 2028, 5, 3, and then we excluded 5 vehicles. Those 5 vehicles are vehicles that are on order right now that don't have a VIN number, so we couldn't put them in the analysis, but those will be brand new vehicles for you guys. If you notice, we identified 3 underutilized vehicles. Those are vehicles currently averaging less than 1,800 miles a year. We will identify more of those as we start to be able to collect better data for you guys. We use this numbers to go into the fleet analysis, which is the next slide. If you scroll up just a little. So if you look, these vehicles, there's currently 68 vehicles in that fleet because we took those 5 that are police vehicles that are ordered that we didn't have VIN numbers for. So we identified 68 vehicles. We're going to look to reduce your fleet size by 1%, which is the vehicles we identified as underutilized. Your current cycle right now is 7.56 years, which is aided heavily by that big purchase in 2023. Your annual miles is 5,800. Your current maintenance, which we got from Dewey and the team, is 106.33. Current miles per gallon is about 10. That also is offset a lot by the older vehicles and the police vehicles. The maintenance cents per mile right now is 22 cents per mile, and we're looking at $3 per gallon of gas over the next 10 years. This analysis is showing a 10-year snapshot, 5 years to phase the program in and 5 years when the program's completely phased in. If you look at that yellow line, that indicates what you guys' average costs are over the last 10 years annually. So you're annually average purchasing 9 vehicles per year. Sometimes it was quite a bit higher than that. Sometimes it was quite a bit lower than that. But it averaged out to 9 per year. Own 68 vehicles. That purchase cost is about $417,000. The resale of those vehicles ended up being about $37,000. The maintenance cost is $87,000 on average, and the fuel cost is about $120,000 for a full all-in budget of $585,206. As you look, if you remember the last slide, we're looking at phasing in 18 vehicles in year 1. So you would lease 18 vehicles. You would still own 47 because they don't mathematically make sense to cycle out now. So you'd have 47 that you own, 18 on lease. The lease payments would average out to $179,692. We would be able to sell those 18 vehicles for $122,300. Maintenance drops about 20% because of the oldest offenders, getting the oldest offenders out of the fleet. Fuel costs go down too because new vehicles just represent a much higher fuel economy than the older vehicles do. So your budget in year 1 would end up being about $227,000, representing about a $350,000 cash savings. And as you can see, that goes in year over year as the program is phasing in to represent a 10-year savings of about $700,000, and then a sustainable savings moving on from that as well. We know a lot can happen in 10 years, but this is just the concept of the program. We're currently working with Carlton and Dana now to identify the right 18 vehicles and also identify what specs they need to have on it and what aftermarket. If you notice in this analysis, these ERVs are included in the analysis, which are the police interceptors. We put $13,500 in aftermarket in those vehicles. 3/4 tons, we're averaging $3,000, and half tons, we're averaging $1,000. So aftermarket is factored into this analysis, as well as all costs that are associated with enterprise. Does anybody have any questions on this? I know this is the crux of the program. No?
Lots of questions, but maybe let you finish.
Okay.
Then come back.
Yep, and then just moving to the last couple slides, it's just the remarketing piece and what we can do on the remarketing side. So I just want to show you, we just recently sold a 2019 Ford F-250 for a government client, 62,000 miles on it. We sold it for $24,146. Black Book value is what we use for our indicator for how well are we doing in the resale market. We sold it 14.5% above Black Book value. So these are government vehicles that are driven hard, that are F-250s, that are more the work style truck variety, and that's a 6-year-old vehicle that we're able to do that, which represented a $3,000 savings over what industry average would indicate on that.
Question. Yeah. Are you selling those domestically or internationally?
Domestically, to local dealers for the most part.
To local dealers. Thank you.
You look at a local dealership, if they can get a vehicle that's 5 years old with 35,000 miles on it, that's gold. They can offer dealership financing, they can offer additional warranty, so there's a valuable resource for them. It's the same concept we do for the enterprise rental vehicles. We buy them and we sell them at low miles for top dollars because the dealerships really need those type of vehicles to put in their fleet. And if you look here below, these are Ford Explorer Interceptors. This is a vehicle that people are like, okay, how do you guys sell these vehicles? So these are representing about the last, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 8 that we sold. Average 62,000 miles on those vehicles, average 5 years old, and we were selling them on average for $16,459. So there's a resale market for that. Now those we have to search a little further. It's still domestic, but we have to search a little further to find dealerships that specialize in the resale of police interceptor vehicles. But we do have those dealership networks. We have well over 1,000 government clients nationwide, so we've identified these local dealerships all throughout
How many
the country.
government clients did you say you had?
Well over 1,000 nationwide.
How long has this program been offered?
It's been offered for quite a while. Where it really took off was in 2009 when The Big Short happened and the recession hit. We have a lot of commercial clients. We've been doing this, Enterprise Fleet Management has been doing the leasing side since 1957. We're the largest fleet management company in North America. Most people know us from the rental side, but this side's almost as big. We have almost 750,000 vehicles on lease. So this side, though, grew out of a council like you guys saying, well, if you do this for local businesses, we're struggling right now during a recession. Can you do the same concept for government? Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into identifying the verbiage that needs to be on the master lease agreements, the process to make sure that it is truly going to work and that it's going to be the right long-term investment for clients. But we've really taken off since then. It now represents about 22% of our business. I would love it to be a lot more exciting than this, but that's pretty much it.
I will ask my colleagues if they have any particular questions they'd like to pose. We'll start with Dr. Morgan.
Yeah, what advantages do you have over ARA Fleet, Element Fleet Management, Lease Planner, Wheels Incorporated, which I understand are other competitors to you?
Yeah, we don't sell our vehicles at auction for the most part. I mean, unless it's a very old vehicle. All of those fleet management companies sell their vehicles at auction. We sell our vehicles back to independent wholesale dealers.
Okay, but the actual fleet management portion, other than just you not selling at auction, how does that translate to an advantage for us?
The local account management team, you'll be assigned a local account manager. We're the only one that has that as well. So the advice piece that you're going to get in the ongoing management side is something that's unique to Enterprise.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
We were awarded the preferred vendor on the state contract too. So from a due diligence standpoint, that's how 99% of our clients enter the program is through the Sourcewell award letter.
Thank you.
Is there a state government you do this for? I didn't hear you.
No, we only represent local municipalities. We do state government for the state of Missouri and for the state of Florida, but nothing here in North Carolina.
I've got a bunch of questions, and in no particular order. On your government total cost of ownership, you showed 9% for risk management. What is that?
Insurance.
Insurance.
Which you guys would keep through the League of Municipalities, as you're doing now.
Right. Call it risk management.
Clearly, the resale market for used vehicles went through some real gyrations during COVID. And first you had, Hertz and National dumping their fleets, and then no one could buy any cars, couldn't get parts.
Hertz was dumping the fleets. National is Enterprise.
I think in your master equity lease agreement, there's a paragraph which, if I read it correctly, is after the lease is over, whenever returning the car, there is a true-up. There's a possibility, depending on what the resale value is. How is that, you've been doing this a long time, how has that worked out over time?
We're very conservative. As you can see in that equity lease analysis where we did the reduced book value down to $8,000 and that vehicle is worth $28,000 or $26,000, that's the gap that we leave in between. That's your equity on that vehicle. So,
but that's today.
Correct. There's never a situation where a 5-year-old F-250 with 35,000 miles is going to sell for less than $8,000 unless there's serious body damage on there.
And the 692 projected 10-year savings does not factor in any probability of that because you just haven't seen that. Your experience is that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, we went through COVID, and COVID changed a lot of the vehicle market. Granted, the resale values of vehicles went up, but your incentives almost disappeared. So a vehicle that you guys were buying for $28,000 before COVID, you were buying for $38,000 after COVID if you could find it. So the program still worked throughout that time as well. So we have clients that they were able to call on that's prior to COVID, that we were able to get them through a time that the vehicles were hard to come by, the cash flow was tough, the vehicle costs went through the roof, but we were still able to capitalize on the resale market. So as vehicles go up, the resale market follows. As vehicles go down, the resale market goes down as well, but your total cost of ownership stays about the same. It's just where that money lies. It's in the front end or the back end.
On your fleet planning analysis, which I think I followed, not 100% sure, but in the first 3 years, the number of vehicles, the so-called annual needs is 18, 16, 16, relatively constant, but the net cash is highly variable. Is that just a function of which specific vehicles were involved there?
Function of which specific vehicles also, it's just eventually all three of those years. So in that case, by year 3, 50 vehicles would be on lease, which represents that 551 payment. But that does have it's quite a few police vehicles in there as well, which are represented by, $13,500 in aftermarket, which ups that cost as well.
And again, back to the 692 in projected savings, that assumes that you're getting something like $27,000 resale value. If it turned out over a forward 10-year period of time, you got 15,000, which is still recouping a decent amount of equity, that number would be a lot lower, the 692.
Correct. But historical data tells us that that's not going to be the case. And if it is, what we would have you do is just lease the vehicle a little bit longer. When COVID first hit, I don't know if you guys remember, the resale market dropped dramatically. We had clients that were up for renewal on their leases that instead of having them replace those vehicles, we just held out for the market to rebound. Because it's a lot easier to keep a five-year-old vehicle another year than it is to keep a 13-year-old vehicle another year. So we had them keep those vehicles another year based on our recommendation, and the resale market skyrocketed from there to an all-time high. So some of our clients were seeing 15 to 25% differences on their resale based on our recommendations.
And can you ballpark any percentage of that 692 that is due to your increased buying power? You have more buying power than we have.
We do on certain vehicles. Certain vehicles, you guys have the same buying power. So we are able to buy off state contract. So what we can do is we can look at our internal networks, and several vehicles, a lot of your pickup trucks, a lot of your SUVs will be slightly lower than state contract. But in the event that we're not, we can piggyback off state contract pricing. We can utilize the state contract dealers.
So buying power, resale is a big advantage, but buying power does not really contribute to the savings.
It will a little bit, but knowing what
Material.
vehicle to buy is key too. There is between a Ram, a Ford, and a Chevy, there is this distinct cost of ownership difference between those vehicles.
One last question. I'm familiar with Blue Book. What is Black Book?
It's the commercial index for Blue Book.
I'm sorry?
It's the commercial index for Blue Book. So Blue Book is for retail buyers. Black Book is commercial index.
Thank you.
No problem.
Out of curiosity, are all of your suppliers domestic vehicles?
We can do any vehicle make, manufacturer, model. The term domestic vehicle is a rough term at the moment. Sometimes your Nissans are built in America and your Fords are built in Canada. But yeah, we can let you guys know where they're built. But ultimately, the vehicles you decide on, we give you the data, and the vehicles you decide on are ultimately your decision. So that's what we will run through with Carlton. Is we've already looked at several different vehicles where we compared the big 3 domestic manufacturers to each other, and looked at the right vehicle from a total cost of ownership. Between fuel economy, between projected maintenance costs, and mainly between depreciation of the asset itself.
You mentioned you could help finding the right vehicle. What does that mean? I mean, are you going to go in and evaluate how we use a particular vehicle, department's requirements, and recommend certain changes?
So not necessarily on-site, but what we're doing right now is we're working with Carlton, we're working with Dewey, and they're going to work with the department heads to determine what vehicle do they need to do the job. And then we're going to look at what specifications we can put on that vehicle that still maintain its return on investment, but also allow them to continue to do their job. So we're not getting a vehicle that has too little specifications on it, not getting a vehicle with too much.
Not getting the 250, we're getting a 150 instead.
Oftentimes, you're able to cycle down. Now, what we would look at with you guys quite a bit, and we talked about it with Carlton, is looking at smaller compact trucks, which fit the city's footprint a lot better than some of these larger trucks.
How about electric vehicles?
Have studies that can do that. We have several government entities around the country that do all electric vehicles. We're agnostic when it comes to the vehicle types. We're agnostic to the manufacturer. We adhere to the data, and then we look at that data and go, this is our recommendation based on this. But we can do any kind of EV studies, and we have clients now that we are in the process of doing EV studies on based on their Geotab device, which is a tracking device, which tells us how many hours the vehicles run, how often they run, and how many miles they go. to determine what vehicles can move to electric vehicles over a year of study. Now, we don't want to do that determination too soon and put somebody in a bad spot. But we'll learn that a lot of the vehicles can move to electric. And there's often, too, there's some cities that we're working with across the country that we're looking to do, for lack of a better term, beefed up golf carts, where it makes sense to have those vehicles run by the city as well, which we can provide those as well. Mm-hmm.
In fact, as I look at our fleet analysis, actually, I'd like to congratulate the village to keep the vehicles as long as possible, which reduces the lifetime cost. I mean, because I think the general thought is that the longer you keep a vehicle, the less expensive it is on a per-year basis. Am I wrong there? I'm wrong there.
That's what the analysis just showed, yeah. So if you buy a vehicle, and not every vehicle is the same, but the vehicles you guys operate as a city, as you showed in that equity analysis, if you buy a vehicle for, if you want to scroll up a little bit.
This one?
And about that curve, is that where you're going to go?
Yeah, the next one right here. Scroll down. If you buy this vehicle, one slide, if you don't mind.
Down? This one?
If you buy this vehicle for $45,000, and we're able to sell that vehicle in 5 years for $27,000, if you keep that vehicle for 5 more years and sell it for $7,000, it actually incurs greater depreciation in year 5 through 10 than it did year 1 through 5. If you keep that vehicle for 3 more years, you sell it for $2,000, it still incurs.
Vehicle dependent. General, it seems to me that acquiring newer vehicles all the time means that the village is going to be funding the depreciation at the very most expensive part of the depreciation cycle.
Well, it's not because of the incentives that governments get. So governments get a much larger incentive than the general public gets. Incentive, vehicle incentive, money that comes from the manufacturer themselves. So governments get a very large incentive on those vehicles. So if you combine the high incentive that governments get, the low mileages that governments go, and our ability to resell those vehicles at top dollar, that's kind of where the secret sauce is within lowering that depreciation cost.
Competitively with other potential vendors, it's a little bit, normally wouldn't we be expected to go out and look for potential?
Go ahead, Dana, you can answer that.
Since the enterprise fleet management, the contract we would sign with them, and the services they provide have already been competitively bid, we are able to, by Sourcewell, we are able to utilize that contract without doing our own, competitive type of process.
Explain that a little more, because that's one of the things I was getting ready to talk with once we finish this presentation. So on what I've said before and then what Jack's saying now, it has been competitively bid out, what you're telling me, through state governments, through what?
Through Sourcewell, which is a government purchasing cooperative.
Speak up a little. I couldn't hear you what you said.
Through Sourcewell, which is a government purchasing
Sourcewell.
It's a government purchasing cooperative.
A cooperative among the states?
The entire nation.
The entire nation?
Yes.
I got it now. Okay.
Is this something that we use on a frequent basis, Sourcewell?
Yes.
Okay, so you're right now from the staff telling the council you feel very comfortable that this has gone through a competitive process, and what you're presenting to us right now is the best of the competitors, is the best route of what they have for the competitors again. Rephrase that. What is being presented is competitive on there and the best of other options.
Yes, I would say that we have looked at it, and we think this is our best option moving forward for managing our fleet.
Okay.
Not necessarily lowest cost per se, but best overall, factoring non-cost issues as well.
Yes, that would be.
Okay, well,
One thing I didn't see in there was anything talking about the cost of a vehicle being down. Okay, and every time I go to any sort of folks to rent a car, they're like, well, if you don't get our insurance and it goes to the shop, you're responsible for paying all the times that it's in the shop. So is that considered in our thing here about what the cost is of a vehicle being done?
Continue to use legal municipalities for your risk management.
But as far as, if the vehicle is in a wreck, this is actually an advantage to us because we'd be able to source it through them much quicker than we could do it on our own.
Yes. We could source it through local dealership if needed and
Okay.
get the
So
state
basically our
contract.
downtime is much less if there's any issues like that.
Yeah, and if a vehicle goes into, I would say go into a shop, it'll be your internal shop. Obviously, we've got rental pieces of that as well. If it's under warranty, rental vehicles are provided.
Okay. Those are my two biggest concerns on there. One, the competition, which now has been answered. And then the second thing on that was the time factor, because there is a time issue. Whenever you keep your own vehicle and it's 13 years old, goes to the shop because it needs a new transmission, that's the vehicle being down for, 2 weeks or whatever.
That's when you don't go back to the shop and get it, you just sort of leave it there.
Your vehicle's new enough to where it's just living in preventative maintenance world, which is basic oil changes, transmission flushes, things that the manufacturers recommend. Most of these vehicles will never need an additional set of brakes or tires through the program.
Did I understand it correctly that we still are going to be obtaining the insurance for all these vehicles? And so they'll be newer vehicles, so the insurance will be more expensive.
I don't know how that would work for you guys on that. But every government client that you saw there uses the League of Municipalities for risk management.
That's likely a safe assumption. We're in the process of renewing insurance now and working through other providers for insurance to make sure we're receiving the best price on that. So that's likely a safe assumption.
And
but
we have a physical damage coverage that we can look to provide as well, at least a quote for on that side. And obviously, being that we're tied to Enterprise Rent-A-Car, we're very efficient on the physical damage repair piece.
So let me jump in. Carlton and Dana have been looking at this for months and months now, and so we didn't take just these numbers that they gave us, and so Dana and Carlton have been looking at them and changing the assumptions, and if we don't save as much on gasoline or not as much as maintenance, and every time we've looked at it, we still come out that we have positive savings in it, and that's one reason why we're recommending it to you. I don't think there is any way that through this program we will spend more money, and we will certainly have a newer, more modern fleet available to our village staff.
How long is our contract, what we're signing?
So that's a good point. I was going to have you bring that up. So say in a year or 2 years, we look at this program like, this is a mess, we don't like it, we want out. So you're probably the best on how we can explain how we can get out of it. We could either purchase out our leases, things like that.
You would just purchase out the lease for what you owe on the vehicle. If you want to do that, you ride it out for the 5 years, purchase it out, then you have us sell it early, if that's the case, because of the large incentive that governments get. Most manufacturers require you have a hold requirement for a year on that vehicle, but even if you don't need that vehicle after a year, we can sell that vehicle on your behalf, and most of the time, you're going to be in a right side up position that quickly on those vehicles.
Who holds title to the vehicles?
We would, as a leasing structure.
We never own them.
Correct. But that allows us to sell the vehicles.
We're paying for the use of the vehicles.
Right. And one advantage of that is that we will smooth out our fleet budget. Because some years we purchased, 12 vehicles, and other years we purchased 5, and so, yeah, that will help smooth that out.
And by holding title allows us to sell the vehicles.
The effort by our staff to continue to manage this process? Is it going to be more or less? What's your assessment there, Carlton?
I think it will be less from the standpoint of selling vehicles. Dana may be able to speak a little more to that, but I know it's pretty cumbersome to take pictures of
selling
vehicles,
the vehicles
post
is absolutely.
those. The management of this, we would meet a few times a year with the fleet manager person from Enterprise, and then determine what we need to do for the following year, or our needs being met.
We have an account fleet coordinator too, as well as the day-to-day operations. So when it comes to tags, titles, that's not anything that you guys will be doing. That'll be something that we handle to make sure everything's being done on time on the administrative cost.
We're obviously not a huge client. We're not in New York City or anything like that, but we have, for our size, we have an important fleet, very important to us.
Oh yeah, it's large for your population. Yeah,
Do you have any federal government agencies as a client?
But that's managed through the Washington. We have 55 groups that do the exact same thing we do across the country, and that's all managed by the Washington, D.C.
So you do have some?
Yes, we do.
And I guess Doug sort of answered the question, but is there anything among the staff, anything that gives you a little hesitancy, or is it, sometimes things when they're too good to be true, they actually are true, and they're really great, but I'm just trying to figure out.
I think when we started this process, we were just listening to the presentation. I involved the police department in it because they're significant in their fleet and their vehicles are important, not that others are not as important, but I think think we're very comfortable with recommending that we move forward.
Do you have any usage issues as far as our police vehicles being allowed to move, 20 miles to the home or something like that?
No issues with that.
You do anything in the fire truck business?
If we,
Well, we free up that cash flow.
I would be retired if we did fire trucks by now.
So
I had the chance to talk with Carlton a little bit yesterday after NAC, and leaving aside whether we believe the 692 or not, I think right now we tend to buy vehicles and run them into the ground, and we get very little resale value. To me, the biggest advantage is we have someone who's in this market day to day, and as conditions change, they will be much more sensitive than we will be, and we will make a better decision on when to replace a vehicle rather than buying a truck and driving it for 15 years.
I don't understand that. Plus, we have the newer safety features, which I think is a big, big deal, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I think it's hard to measure that in dollars and cents. It is unquestionably true, I think.
So, coming from someone that drives a 20-year-old car, I think this is the most advantageous route for the village to move forward with. And, if they did it for personal vehicles, maybe I'd have a little, I'd be driving a much nicer car. So.
We don't have that many teenage drivers, I don't think, in the village, but, and on staff, is what I'm saying.
Okay, other questions?
You asked, kind of what gives me concern. The maintenance savings that they were projecting is something that I was like, well, how do you know that? And a lot of our maintenance costs are going to be somewhat fixed because, we have this certain number of employees. What makes me feel comfortable with that is a few of our mechanics are closer to the retirement age. If this works out well, we may even need less of them, and we can phase that in through attrition, and that could serve us very well.
We would never put in an analysis.
Yeah, we're not going to say, yeah, we're going to eliminate employees or something like that. But.
Right.
What if when we do our annual budget, we decide that we don't need X number of vehicles and we want to drop those? Is there a provision that, in fact, unless they're approved, on a yearly basis, or we put them in the budget, we can actually, that's an out, so to speak?
Yeah, if you guys want to sell the vehicle at any time, what matters to us and what should matter to you guys is the vehicle worth more than you owe? And if the vehicle's worth more than you owe, then we can sell that at any given time and give you guys the cash back as opposed to rolling it over to the next vehicle.
Who knows, in the future what our budget would be like and whether or not we want to fund that many vehicles in the fleet,
Yeah, we've, COVID was an interesting learning lesson.
I'll bet.
For us. And, we've gotten through the other side with a lot of our clients. And
Where would our fleet fall in the size of fleets you manage for other governments?
we're about, our niche as a corporation is 20 to about 350. We do manage part of the city of Chicago. We do manage part of the city of Detroit. But that's not our bread and butter. Our bread and butter, as you saw from the references that we have, is that 50 to 150. That
okay.
It's costly to run those size fleets, and there's a lot of manpower that goes in that. But it's not so costly that you need an entire fleet division that's dedicated to that. And that's where we can come in from the advice side as well, too, in the data and analytics.
John, did you have a question?
I read through the contract. A lot of it seemed to be boilerplate. The parts that weren't boilerplate, I thought I either understood or I got the question answered. These are open-end leases. They're not closed-end.
Correct.
You couldn't really run the program the way you run it with closed-end leases, I don't think.
Have the ability to do closed-end leases. They don't make sense, especially for you guys with the resale, the low miles on the resale side.
Were there any
those are
legal
more
issues?
Executive.
My concern is I don't claim to know enough about the legal agreement. I assumed it was reviewed by the village attorney.
It was.
Were there any issues identified there?
Carlton's probably best to answer that.
The issue is the addendum. He just identified the source law
State of
being.
domicile?
Yeah.
Are there any restrictions that you would place on their use or availability or location or on the vehicles? Since that you own them,
Oh, me?
Yes,
I can't
you,
tell if you look
Enterprise.
over me or at me, sorry. No, you should have the full rights of ownership on these vehicles. The only thing that we would want to do is if needed, we could provide you guys multiple aftermarket quotes to make sure that you're getting the best price on the aftermarket and to make sure that it's coming in a timely fashion, which has been historically a challenge since COVID.
Some of those uses usually come for the insurance side of things. That's where the
They
restrictions
may
apply.
have some advice, but that wouldn't have anything to do with the fact that we hold title to those.
And the League of Municipalities is a customer of theirs as well, so.
Relative to the overall budget, I don't think the annual savings is not going to move the needle, but I think we're leveraging expertise that is more likely that they have that we don't have. And we're going to gain something from it, would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty simple concept that you buy it cheap and sell it when it's at its highest value. But those are things that we do not know how to do on our own.
Yeah, I think there's some advantages to leasing, first of all, you get newer vehicles. The safety issues, the safety features that are on newer cars is really significant, in my opinion. You preserve capital, I guess. I don't know, it really isn't going to move the needle on our capital budget, though, is it, that I know of?
Yeah, so it will save on the capital. It will essentially also be kind of shifting, instead of spending in capital, then it's debt service for the principal and interest payments on the leases. It's just shifting it to operating, but it's still savings overall. So
Will these expenses show up as operating, or will they show up as debt service?
debt service, which falls within the overall total operating category.
The only debt service we now have, as you pointed out to the NAC, is because of some software lease agreements.
These are
And lease, these are leases as well, and they would fall under the definitions of the GASB standard, so it would be accounted for in that same category.
So
Yeah.
what would be a check the Village of Pinehurst should write? What's the first check we write to Enterprise for this?
So it would be on a monthly basis after the initial vehicles deliver. So it would be pro rata for, say, 12th of the month. There'd be pro rata for the first 18 days to get to the next monthly note from then on out.
And what's anticipated the average monthly note?
It would vary by vehicle type. We've given Dana and Carlton some examples of what that would look like on a monthly basis by vehicle type.
But this is in lieu of a capital charge where right now we go out and we buy a vehicle and we write a check for the vehicle.
So you would just pay it on a monthly basis moving forward, yes.
So Dana can probably talk about this in more detail, but rather than buying, the 5 police vehicles we're talking about doing this year, and I forget how other many vehicles are in the purchase plan for this year, we will just lease those. And because we'll be only leasing them for a year, there's some value in between what we are going to pay for the lease and what we would have bought them for. So our plan is to roll that into this system and then buy down the lease cost, and that's going to save us even more money in the long term.
So at what point is our whole fleet under this system? Is it a full year, or is it?
This plan would be 5 years.
5 years.
But that ultimately would be up to us in working with Enterprise in determining which vehicles. This was, a plan for illustrative purposes, amongst other things, but it does not mean that we have to replace the 16 vehicles that they had in the plan for year 2 in year 2. We would work collaboratively with them to determine what's the most appropriate to replace in a given year.
All right, I get it. What do you need from the council?
Yeah, so we have a contract that could be approved tonight, and actually we as staff recommend that. We understand this is a relatively big decision that we haven't ever done before, so if you want to take a minute to think about it, we can, but I feel like we're in a pretty good place.
The questions that I would want to, on my checklist would be, one, has the village attorney reviewed, and the answer is yes. 2, how long would this take? And I guess I just got that answer. It's over a period of time. Are there others who use this? And we have a neighbor who does in Aberdeen, and there's, what was your number you gave me across the country?
There's over 100 within the state of North Carolina.
Over 100 in the state of North Carolina. 4th was, how did we come by you guys competitively? So I'm pretty much comfortable with it. I'd like to hear a will of the council on this. But
prepared to vote
it was an excellent, I will say this, that was a very exhaustive but excellent presentation. I didn't think I would understand it all after I went through it, after reading it, but I do now.
I concur with you, Pat. I had a series of checklists on here that have been answered, and I'm prepared to vote on this now in support of it.
John, do you have a comment at all?
I'd be prepared to make a motion.
Okay, over in here. And
Go for it, John.
Jack, our race car driver, what do you think?
Philosophically opposed to leasing, but since the staff appears to have vetted this very, very carefully, I'm inclined to go along with staff on this one here.
How can somebody who works for IBM be?
Well, I've seen what you drive, Jack. I understand.
One of the big advantages of leasing was technology obsolescence.
That's right.
I don't think the technology obsolescence is going to be a big issue in this case. So.
Yeah, okay. All right. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the master equity lease agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion adopted.
Okay, just, is it going to be reviewed by our attorney, of course?
It has been.
Then,
That was one of the questions. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I will sign this before the night's out. Thank you both, gentlemen. That was a very good presentation. Okay, now, it was pretty exhausting. Huh? Didn't you feel like you were sitting for finals or something there for a period of time? All right, let us go on to other business. I'll ask council, and then we can adjourn for a short period of time and go into work session. Does anybody have any other business items they'd like to bring up?
No.
I would just make the observation that as we've talked a little bit about the process by which capital projects get surfaced and what have you, it's a great example of Carlton started thinking about this and running some numbers, as I understand it, and then Enterprise happened to call him. So it's a great staff-originated idea that I'm not sure any of the five of us might have come up with.
No, absolutely not.
And other business, kudos to the staff for that. That was excellent.
That's very well done. Barb or Jack, anything else? Okay.
Move to adjourn the regular meeting.
1 second before you do that, I just want to, I've gotten another inquiry on this topic, and I was going to mention to you tomorrow, Doug. The Magnolia-Chincoquin intersection is drawing attention because of how long it's taking to complete it. So either you can advise us now or next meeting of what's going on.
Yeah, so their contract, I think, expires early June, maybe June 15th, and so at that point, we can break the contract, pull their performance bond, things like that. So we have notified them that that is a likely outcome if they don't move quickly.
Was there a deliverable? I keep thinking there was a deliverable dates.
Yeah,
it passed.
The contract documents state June. As we had put the plan together, it was supposed to be March. So come June, we can have if the contract's not fulfilled, we can cancel the contract and seek damages from them.
I think it was represented at NAC yesterday that they're telling us they expect to complete before June. Whether that happens or not is another.
Exactly.
That was my only other business. Therefore, we can, I heard a motion. Is there a second to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, motion and second adopted. Okey doke. Let's take 10 minutes. Let's regroup at 7:30.